Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, we're going to talk about the Dallas Mavericks making the NBA Finals. We're going to do some Luka Doncic discussion and a quick little breakdown of his masterclass in Game 5. We're going to talk Tidjane Salaun. We're going to talk Minnesota Timberwolves offseason. We've got it all. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What's this gonna be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? Man, this is probably the most lazy weekend I've had in months with, NBA games slowed down quite a bit. I feel like I have a pretty good hold on the 2024 NBA draft, already done some stuff on the 2025 NBA draft. So the beneficiary of that is my family, and that includes my wife, who I plan on watching a movie with tonight as soon as this recording is over on Sunday night. She doesn't work on Monday, so we can stay up after the kids go to bed and get us a nice movie in this evening.
That's fantastic. I love it. I went to the movies this weekend, finally, for the first time in it's probably been a few weeks. Went to see Furiosa.
She saw that last night without me because I didn't want to go. Was it good? I didn't even ask her. I'm an awful husband.
Oh my God.
That
Furiosa. George Miller is there's just nobody alive like George Miller as a visionary filmmaker. Just the visuals that you will see on screen in a George Miller movie are unlike anything that you will ever see, point blank, period. An unbelievable filmmaker. We had to watch, after seeing Furiosa last night or 2 nights ago, we had to watch Fury Road again last night. Have you seen Mad Max Fury Road?
No, she tried to get me to turn it on last night and watch it or today or something like that, and I refused.
Bryce, you have to watch Fury Road. I think it's like one of the great films of the last 20 years. Truly.
Is it what I like me well enough now? Like, we've become good enough friends and talked enough. You kind of know what I'm into and what I'm not. Is this gonna, it doesn't matter if it's the greatest movie of all time. If it's not my thing, it's not gonna be my thing.
But you like things that are like super engaging and propulsive, right?
Yeah. But I don't is it a bunch of fight scenes and stuff like that? I don't need to waste time on that stuff. I don't care about that stuff.
It's not fight scenes. It's like a chase movie where the chase is 2 hours.
Is there a good storyline? Is there something? Okay.
Yes. I'm telling you, it is. Every single image in Fury Road is like a literal fucking painting. It's unbelievable. It's a movie where you watch it and you're just like, I have no idea how they filmed that. And then you read the book about it. I have the book literally behind me about them making it. I don't you read about how they made it and you're just like, I have no idea how the hell that happened.
Okay. I won't care. I don't care about how a movie, I don't get caught up in, oh, those graphics were cool or whatever. I don't think I'm nervous, Sam. I'm nervous that I'm going to text you when this is over and not be happy.
I think that you will enjoy this. I do.
Okay. All right.
Brian Garces is a few weeks. I haven't been to a theater since Straight Outta Compton. Look, I mean, my wife and I go to the movies a lot.
Brian, we're on the same wavelength. I hate movie theaters. I don't like going. I cannot tell you the last movie I went to. I have no clue. I could text my wife right now and maybe she'd give me an answer by the end of the pod. But Brian, I'm with you, man. 100% movie theaters I am out on. I'll wait till it comes out on streaming or what. I guess that's the only way because I don't have a way to play a Blu-ray or DVD. So.
Do you have a video game system for your kids?
They're not quite old enough yet.
Oh, okay. So yeah.
Although
Bryce,
college football 25 has really had me thinking about this.
Yeah, you're gonna have to get one. So Bryce, here's the other important thing, and I'm springing this on you because we haven't talked about it yet.
Okay.
Troy Weaver is gone from the Detroit Pistons.
We don't need to talk about that.
We definitely need to talk about it briefly, at least.
Okay.
Look, this was many years coming now. I think that I probably brought up that Troy Weaver should have been fired 18 months ago.
Sure.
Like, genuinely, I think it was probably 18 months ago. I certainly, the entire time we've been podcasting, I'm never a fan of like guys losing their jobs. Like, when you get to know people in the industry and everything, like, you don't want that, right? And you root for people that you like, but at the end of the day, it is important that this business is something of a meritocracy, even though it isn't always a meritocracy, as we all know. And Troy Weaver did not do nearly a good enough job running the Detroit Pistons. There was never really a point where he was doing a good enough job. I've been very clear that I don't like the fit of all of their young players together over the course of the last multiple years that we've been doing this. Tidjane Langdon is in. We mentioned Tidjane Langdon being in on a recent episode. It is interesting to me that they are giving over this much power immediately to Tidjane Langdon. I like that. I think it's smart. If you're going to hire somebody in the president role, you really, really need to give that person carte blanche in order to give them an opportunity to be successful. And I think that it'll be for the Pistons better in the long run. Look, you can't do worse is kind of where I'm at. Like, we don't know if Tidjane Langdon will be successful. I know that, I've talked to people about Tidjane. I don't have a relationship with Tidjane, but like, I've talked to enough people about him that will tell me and have told me in the past that he's a really intelligent dude and is like really, really thoughtful in terms of how he considers basketball. But, we don't know what it's going to look like under Tidjane Langdon yet. We will see. But at the very least, this is better.
It was time for a move. And you're right. Like, I have given up on trying to say, especially coaches, front office, those type of things are good or bad. When they hired Troy Weaver, I would think that most Pistons fans were excited, right? He came from Oklahoma City. We saw how that's been built out, and they were entering a rebuild, and is exciting. You're right. There's no point in this where people have been able to say, man, Troy Weaver really hit a home run there. I mean, maybe the Jeremy Grant free agent signing that eventually in a roundabout way turned into Jalen Duren was like the best process of things in terms of turning that into another lottery pick. And we don't have to get into the Jalen Duren conversation and how positive that is. I think you described it best once, because I was talking about how there wasn't one move where you were just like, oh my gosh, fire him just because of this. It was like, man, that was pretty bad. That wasn't great, man. The process behind that wasn't good. That Bagley contract was rough, but not like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. But it was death by 1,000 cuts. It would just continue.
Yeah.
No shooting, no floor spacing, too many bigs, not enough bigs, no defense, like all of these different things. And it just never came together in a strategic way that made sense. There was no real vision. And so at the end of the day, hiring somebody that hopefully will have that vision, I think a fresh set of eyes to figure out which of these young pieces do we need to build around moving forward? Who do we keep? Who do we not? That includes the number 5 overall pick. I think that's good. And I said a few weeks ago months ago on my pod, this organization just needs to hitch their wagon to a few pieces and let's go. One of those is Cade Cunningham. They need to figure out if it's Monty Williams or not. My guess is he at least gets this season to figure that out, or some of this season, but I don't know. That's still very much up in the air. And then Tidjane Langdon. Let's hitch our wagon to those 3, whatever other pieces, and let's go and let's start to figure it out.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. They have a lot of cap space this summer. I think a lot of teams and a lot of agents certainly are hoping to be able to use them to be able to build value for their clients this summer. Look, like we've talked a little bit about Malik Monk in Detroit. I think that would be a signing that makes sense. Other than that, they need a 4-man. It feels like that's something.
We talked about
Hartenstein would be great. We will see. We will see how it goes for Tidjane Langdon, but now we'll have to. We're not going to have the Troy Weaver, disaster to talk about.
Can I ask you one question real quick? What did you think about them essentially offering him the off-site scouting job or role or whatever? Like, did you, I saw some people said it was completely disrespectful. Some people thought it was a slap in the
did that get out publicly?
I mean, I've seen it because I quote tweeted like hand up, hey, I will take that job if Troy Weaver doesn't want it. And
so someone behind the scenes told me that. I wasn't sure. Like, it wasn't really one of those things where it was like reportable that someone told me that. But yeah, someone told me that was a thing that was like probably going to happen, honestly. No, it's not disrespectful, but like, if you're him, your contract says you're doing one specific job and that's not the job, right? So if I was him, I would want to move on like wholeheartedly. And if I was the Pistons and if I still valued his scouting eye, which he has value within this, like the scouting community, certainly, sure. Like he can go in and get intel different ways. He can find, different, he's certainly evaluated well in the past. I think that a lot of Pistons fans like some of the core pieces. It's just to me whether or not they fit together. I understand wanting his eye in your organization. It's just that I don't. I understand him not wanting to do that.
Yeah, and so the one I quote tweeted was Evan Sidery. Is that right?
Sure.
For Forbes.
I don't know how to. Yeah.
So that was part of his whenever he was talking about it. That came from him. He writes for Forbes. So okay. I haven't talked to, like, I don't specifically remember like that tweet coming from like Amari or James, but it definitely was out there and people talking about. So it was interesting that, and I don't blame Troy either for saying, no, like I'm good. I'll go find something else.
Yeah. Or take the year. Like he's getting paid out for a year. Take the year. You know what I mean? Yep. So, okay. Let's talk about the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks are into the NBA Finals, having defeated the Minnesota Timberwolves 4-1 in the Western Conference Finals. Game 5 was ugly. My goodness. That was a beatdown. There's just not another way to put it. It felt like Luka just like really took it personally. I believe that like Ben Golliver tweeted that like there was a woman in the front row or something that had like a tissue and was like saying cry more to Luka. And then Luka, obviously makes that shot at the beginning of the third quarter and says, haha, who's crying now, motherfucker? Like, just an icon. Luka is unbelievable. And we're going to talk about Luka momentarily, but before we do that, I want to talk about what they've surrounded Luka with and why I think it's so important to acknowledge what they're doing and what Nico Harrison has built. We talked about this briefly on a previous episode, but I kind of want to like really run through everything that's like been important for them, because I think it was a series of moves that I had some questions about while they were happening, but then you go through it. It was weird. So like, I didn't like the value necessarily of the PJ Washington move, but that like, and I talked about it on the show right after that, I was like, this team's like really interesting in the playoffs now. Like they have a lot of different ways that they can mix and match against you. So I kind of just want to run through it. Like to me, you look at this roster, let's even say a year ago, right? It was Luka, Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, like Reggie Bullock was on that team. Tim Hardaway Jr. was on that team. Christian Wood was on that team.
It seems so long ago, Sam.
It seems so long ago, but like, seriously, like that is at the start of last season, that was like their core group was Dinwiddie, DFS, Reggie Bullock, Tim Hardaway Jr., Christian Wood, and then like Josh Green, Maxi Kleba,
Dwight Powell was playing, he played 76 games for that team last year.
No, Dwight Powell played 20 minutes a night and started 64 games. Like,
started 64. Yeah.
Because it was like a big deal that Christian Wood wasn't starting after they acquired him.
He played 26 minutes a night. Goodness gracious.
Yeah. Like if you have Christian Wood on your team, it's probably not going to go well in terms of like wins and losses. That's kind of been showcased at this point. So the moves that they make here, they trade Kyrie, Dorian Finney-Smith, a first and a second round pick. They trade Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, a first and second round pick for Kyrie Irving. That's the big one that obviously, has created this awesome partnership with Luka Doncic, right? Huge move, has completely changed, the trajectory of the franchise in some way, because they have that second star that is the ideal second star in a lot of ways to Luka, as Kyrie has shown throughout his career playing next to LeBron James. By the way, is Luka kind of obviously entirely different players, but is he the most equivalent thing we've seen to LeBron in the last few years? I know that they're very different, but obviously enormous bodies, can bring the ball up the court, can beat you on the block, a lot of different things. So pairing Kyrie with Luka, even though Luka does things entirely differently than LeBron, I kind of love that idea. And I liked the fit at the time. It's just that there was so much question about what Kyrie they were going to get. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember for the last episode, I brought some of this up, Sam, because I went and looked at the grades for that trade and the comments, and people remember Kyrie was coming off some, it was the COVID stuff and he missed this. And, there was just a bunch of things with Kyrie that wasn't even necessarily on the court that people were really questioning. And I remember reading some of the articles, you can't win with him and you don't want to bring this type of person into your organization and all of those things. And so people really, really questioned that trade and what the Mavericks were doing, trying to pair him with Luka.
Yeah. The thing about Kyrie is that other players around the league, like him.
Sure.
Other players around the league, are not as politically engaged as basketball Twitter, just point blank. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that there are, there certainly are players that are, but by and large, the basketball, playing community is not, they're not going to care about Kyrie's stances or whatever. A lot of people just like Kyrie as a dude. So you kind of put him into the, locker room or whatever. He's going to be good up until the moment that he gets a little bit frustrated, and then we'll see where it goes. But by and large, it's not super surprising to me that the first year here is going well for Kyrie in Dallas, just because the first year for Kyrie in a place, if you look through his history, it tends to go pretty well. Right. Yeah. I'm not saying that won't change. Maybe it will. There's maturity aspects, getting older, everything like that. I think it's entirely possible. The rest of it could go well, but it's not surprising to me that the first year has gone as well as it has. Dallas then signs Grant Williams this offseason, by the way, and then essentially moves Grant Williams to acquire PJ Washington and a first round pick. Right. And then that gets facilitated through Oklahoma City and everything. That's a huge move, obviously. PJ Washington has been great for them, has been, a clear starter for them, gives them, a guy to match up with bigger bodies. That's a move that I was very questionable on at the time, because what we had seen from PJ in Charlotte, outside of really his second year in Charlotte, was a guy that, was not great at getting back in transition defense. His help defense was, not all that engaged, but they bet on bringing him in that engagement level rising at a high level, and him becoming the kind of defender that we saw flashes of in that second season and, haven't seen on a consistent basis up until then. It was a great bet by Nico Harrison.
I mean, 2 years ago, he shot 32% in the regular season on corner threes. The year before this last year, 35%. In the regular season, Sam, he shot 25% from the corner on threes. And so far in the playoffs, he shot 42. And I brought up the clutch shooting the last time we recorded, how many clutch threes he had made in the playoffs. So yes, the defense, absolutely. That's a great point. It should be the first thing we talk about. And he's going to have to be big in these, finals in these games, because all of these Celtics dudes can score. And so he's going to have to really, really guard. But I think his ability to play in the corner and going back to the Thunder series, what did we say? We said the way that the Mavs win this series is they hit corners threes on the weak side. PJ Washington, Derrick Jones Jr., et cetera, et cetera. We'll talk about these other guys. PJ's done that along with the defense.
Yep. They obviously go and they get the center position fixed in the summer and at the deadline.
Yeah. Wow.
where in the summer, Oklahoma City basically wants to move up to get Case and Wallace from number 12 to number 10. They want to confirm that they're going to get Case and Wallace. They go and they trade Davis Bertans in number 10 in order to move down to number 12. So they basically get off of this enormous Davis Bertans deal, which opens up like all of their flexibility for the season.
Yep.
Right? Huge move, like an enormous trade. And then, they moved Rashawn Holmes, or they acquired Rashawn Holmes in order to get the Omax Prosper free agents, in order to get the Omax Prosper pick, because Sacramento wanted to open up more cap space in order to lock in their guys on extensions. So they used like a decent amount of that space, but like it gave them like $5 or $6 million, all of their draft moves in total in flexibility this year that I think has been helpful for them going out and being able to get like Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington, everything like that. But that move to get Lively has been huge because, as you know, like I had Lively first team all rookie. You had him certainly, I think, sixth.
I had him sixth. He was the
right?
next guy for me, and it came down to minutes. Like that's just I over prioritized that, but absolutely, like right there in the mix.
I don't even know if you over prioritized it. You just prioritized it, right?
Yeah.
But Derek Lively was incredible all season, and he's been like unbelievable in the playoffs for them.
Unreal.
And it's in all of the ways that made me love him as a prospect. I definitely had a top 10 grade on him. I think I had him at like 8. Maybe last year, something like that, because of the versatility that he can bring on defense. His ability to guard in space, and it's really the ability to run different ball screen coverages with Lively. You can blitz with him. You can play at the level with him. You can certainly play and drop with him. The game that like really clued that in, if you go and watch, is the Oral Roberts game from his freshman season at Duke. Oral Roberts plays this like, in the NCAA tournament, crazy wide open style. And they just, you can switch with Lively. They switched him occasionally. They played drop with him occasionally against Max Asmus. They played at the level, like 35 feet away from the rim, and he was fine there. There are just a lot of things that you can do with Lively that I think made this an awesome fit, particularly with Luka as a rim running big who can finish lobs, and as well a defensive piece who can really run different ball screen coverages for you and give you a lot of versatility.
And I just want to add real quick to that before we talk about Gafford and all that. He also passes out of the short roll, which has become very important in these playoffs because Luka specifically, but even Kyrie have been so good that teams obviously want to trap them and get the ball out of their hands. And it just is night and day, as much as I like Gafford and as important as he's been, between Lively operating in the short roll, especially with his passing decisions, compared to Gafford. And I think if you have Powell and Gafford are your only options there, then you're a little bit in trouble whenever teams really want to just blitz you and trap you all game long.
100% right. So speaking of Gafford, they go and they get Daniel Gafford for a pick swap, basically. That's a move that I liked at the time because like I just didn't really care about the pick swap. Like I was like, okay, you're going to get like a guy who's really going to give you 48 minutes of rim protection and rim running for Luka Doncic, because we were frankly at the point where the Rashawn Holmes bet didn't work and Dwight Powell was playable but not.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't going to work in the playoffs. Right.
Agreed. Yep.
So in the last year, we've gone through now 4 guys that they've gotten. Kyrie is the second star, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively. The 5th guy that they went out was like a miraculous swing where they go and they sign like late in the offseason, even Derek Jones Jr. To what was like almost a minimum deal. And he has been a revelation for them. Derek Jones Jr. was always a guy that I liked on defense, but he's taken another leap this year on defense as well, being able to guard the opposing team's best player consistently throughout the start of the year, being able to do a lot of different things that have really, really helped Dallas. And oh, by the way, Derek Jones Jr. this year shot 34% from 3. That's like enough to where it's okay. It's not a great number, obviously, but it's enough to where you can keep him out there and get the most advantage of that shooting. And oh, by the way, whenever we talk about prospects and, you know, guys who can't shoot at all coming into the league, developing catch and shoot jumpers. Derrick Jones Jr. was all athlete, no shooting coming into the NBA, just like point blank. That's what the profile was. And here we are shooting 34% from three. The problem is that it took him 7 years to get there to where he can shoot 34% from three. And most teams don't really have that kind of runway to be able to take advantage of that.
And just real quick, we talked about PJ Washington from the corners in the playoffs. Derrick Jones Jr., 47% from the corners in the playoffs, and there's 68% of his attempts. So he's been absolutely incredible. Again, playing on the weak side in the corner. And if you're going to take Luka away, you're like, all of this stuff just fits together so well, right? You have Luka and Kyrie on the ball. You got to take those guys away, and they're still going to be able to get buckets. You want to not tag and stay on the weak side corner. You have two incredible lob threats with great rim gravity. You want to take them away. Well, now PJ Washington is knocking down corner threes at 42%. Derrick Jones Jr. at 47%. Even Jaden Hardy at 38%. I don't know if we'll talk about that or not, but him going in and playing Tim Hardaway Jr.'s minutes, that was interesting decision by Jason Kidd, probably the right one. And then even Kyrie, 36% on corner threes. We know it's not as much, but at times he obviously has to play off ball away from Luka.
Yeah. And just like a couple of other, quick moves here, right? So signed Dante Exum. Dante Exum gave them like really good regular season minutes.
And that's important, Sam,
for them.
You have to eat up innings at times.
Obviously got hurt at some point in the middle of the year and, only played 55 games, but the minutes he gave them, especially early in the season, I thought were really, really valuable. And he's been able to, he plays in, just about all of their playoff games. It's just like not, super, super high level necessarily. Jaden Hardy, you brought up, he was drafted last summer. Great second round swing, a guy that I think I had ranked 20 that they ended up at 37 being able to get, right? Just an absolutely fantastic bet. At the end of the day, I think he does really, really well being able to, come in. And, the thing with him with the Ignite was it was just wild and all over the place. Having him in a more limited role as a scorer has been a little bit more valuable, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I like Jaden Hardy as well. And he was one, I believe the Pistons were actually on the clock in the second round and did not take him. I was like, man, this would be, they get Jaden Hardy in the second round here, I'd be ecstatic. And they ended up not doing so. And it's not, listen, I thought Tim Hardaway Jr., he started off the year really good. I thought he was going to be a huge piece for them, just his scoring punch off the bench. And he hit a slump. He hasn't been able to come out of it. And it seems like an easy decision, but I do give Jason Kidd credit for making this decision to stop playing Tim Hardaway Jr. and giving those minutes to Jaden Hardy. And Jaden Hardy has come in, I feel like, played fairly well. Like, he's not maybe a huge difference maker as these other guys we've talked about. But yeah, you have a second round pick that you're playing real rotation minutes in the Western Conference Finals. And I assume in the NBA Finals now. And if you can even get out for 1 year, even 1 year out of a second round pick, which I think it'll be more, that's a win for a second round pick.
And the last piece of it that we haven't talked enough about is Luka, right?
Before we swoon over Luka, can I give you a crazy Kyrie stat that I looked up?
Do it.
Okay, so starting in Brooklyn until this season, do you know what his field goal 3-point free throw percentages are? So that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the last 5 seasons.
I would bet he's at 49, 41, 88.
49, 40, 91. This dude for the last 5 seasons is almost 50, 40, 90. Of course, on crazy volume. We all know this. Averaging almost 27 points a game. 5 straight seasons. Like, that's the average. You go on B-ball reference, whatever. That's insane, Sam. Like, I bring this up because I am guilty of not appreciating how good Kyrie was because of all of the other noise distracted me from what he was on the basketball court.
Well, and look, we kind of talked about this a little bit last week as well, that I think enough people did not recognize how good Kyrie was throughout the course of this season, particularly. Agreed. And certainly in Brooklyn. And like, look, I don't really want to give like a ton of like the Brooklyn time over the last 2 years, particularly Flowers, just because he was a big part of why that team
Okay, and I will.
struggled.
I'm sure people are
But
screaming at me. There is a game played aspect of this as well, right? Like there weren't a,
totally,
if there weren't, there's a 20 game played season there in Brooklyn, a 29, even 60 last year, 58 this season. So I want that's an important caveat that I should have led with in terms of 5 years. He only played 221 games, so that's a very important aspect of those numbers.
but the number that like you didn't even like bring up, he's averaging 27 points per game in that time too.
Yes.
Like it's like insane how good this dude is. He's an unbelievable player. Like he
Yes.
is an unbelievable player. And I think that, I kind of mentioned this last week, like I said, but I think what happened with him is that because he had injuries early in the year, and I think that by the start of the calendar 2024 part of the year, he'd already missed 16 games. So like he could literally only miss one more throughout the rest of the season in order to be eligible for All NBA. So like that just wasn't really going to be realistic. I think people removed him from that conversation early. Yep. Because so much of basketball media is driven by like the awards race. I think people did not reckon with how good Kyrie like actually was on the court this year, because they were just like, oh, well, we can ignore this. Like, we don't like Kyrie, whatever. Like, we can just put him over on the side. We don't have to talk about him for awards. It's all good. When in reality, I mean, he was unbelievable. He was unequivocally on a per game basis an all NBA player this year.
Yeah.
Like there's not I don't even really think there's an argument against it. Like he was literally a 49, 7, 41, 91 guy that averaged 26 points per game, in 5 rebounds and 5 assists. Like he was in a totally different like stratosphere this year. But he wasn't really, like he kind of was what he's been throughout the course of his last 5 years. It's just like I get it if people don't like the dude, like he's done some things that I certainly don't agree with. But in terms of like basketball, this dude's like a no-brainer Hall of Famer that is now, helping lead another team to the finals. And this is absolutely a huge like tick in the box for his legacy and a huge moment for him, to where like if he wins, like, and look, he's probably not going to win the NBA Finals MVP award because Luka's there. But I mean, if you told me he averages 30 points a game in the finals, like it's not out of this world crazy, right?
And we've talked about how perfect of a fit he is next to Luka, because that role is not as easy as what I think people think sometimes, in terms of, okay, let me go play second fiddle next to this very ball dominant, primary creator in Luka Doncic. And then whenever he goes out of the game, now I have to go be that,
100%.
on ball. And it works perfectly because he can do the same things, obviously in completely different ways, but run the ball screen, hit the lobs, make the passes, all of those different things. And the other thing with Kyrie, and I'm sure we'll talk about it with Luka, he's been pretty good defensively, in my opinion, throughout these playoffs. And maybe he was all year long, but there have been multiple games in the playoffs where I'm like, man, Kyrie's really getting after it. Obviously, he gives up a little bit size-wise, but active hands, digging, aggressive, those things. And that's going to be huge in the finals, because both of these dudes aren't going to get to go rest on somebody who's not a threat. So both of these guys are going to have to be very, very good on the defensive end, which we have seen in multiple games throughout the playoffs.
Okay. I think that now we have to talk about
Luka,
who just literally like ripped the heart out of Minnesota in front of like its own fan base over, what was that? That was probably 4 days ago now.
Yeah.
What an incredible player. Like what an unbelievable player. Just
Pretty
point
good.
blank, right? Like before we even like get into all of, the tape breakdown and everything. Honestly, it's not that complicated of tape to break down. It's just like this dude completely dominating, like this one here to start. Like, I think this is literally their first offensive possession. They have PJ Washington like bring the ball up, and then they have Derrick Jones Jr. set this like little back screen for Luka to try and force this switch here where Luka's going to come around. And look, the goal here is, yes, if Luka can get a easy bucket here, great off the cut, but really you just want the switch onto Mike Conley. And again, that's something that we brought up on the last episode we did. right,
With the double drag. Yep.
is that they've been trying to involve Mike Conley in all of these actions. That's been their goal. That they want to engage Mike Conley as a defender, and they did it here. Obviously the double comes from Ant, and Rudy goes up, goaltends the ball, but you can't double Luka because he's going to kill you with the pass. He is going to murder you on the block if you're a small. He's one of the best processors and pick and roll players of all time. Like, I think we can just say that at this point. He's this incredible basketball player. And then, like, literally second possession, it came from the jump. It wasn't even like, oh yeah, he took a while to get going. No, literally their first two possessions were post up score, drilling a three in Anthony Edwards' eye, without any offensive movement, right? Like, this is just special. You see here, like, Ant, for some reason, like, way sags off. I would guess that this was kind of, look, I don't want to kill Ant too much here. This looks scheme based to me, where if they set like a high ball screen and Kyrie was coming off of it, they wanted like this help here at the elbow. I don't love the idea of doing it. And look, this is, smart by Dallas to have Luka here instead of somebody else here. But, just that little bit of space that you give, even, it's over. It's curtains. He's too good. He's way too good at basketball. And then literally, again, next minute, I think this is their fourth offensive possession, right? Here we go. Brings the ball up, step up screen from Gafford. And we just get into like a disgusting, nasty step back. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
He's so good, man. I love, listen, I hate the whining. I love the trash talk. I don't like how much he whines to the officials and all of that stuff. Is what it is. I love him trash talking. I even kind of love whenever he's going at people. Like, I love whenever they kind of go back at fans and stuff like that. That's who I was as a player. I love going at student sections and stuff like that. So I love the emotion. I love it.
Speaking of which, we should plug the, breakdown series I'm doing.
Yeah.
So, Alex R is up on the YouTube channel already. I broke down tape for 45 minutes with Alex R, potential number 1 overall pick for the Atlanta Hawks. Go do that. But the reason I bring this up now is I've done them already with Tyler Kolek and Baylor Shireman, two guys that like love to get involved with crowds and like talk shit. And we talked about it with both of them. And it's just like really, really fun. So go look for those series, hit the subscribe button. We'll have, a bunch of those going up certainly over the course of the next few weeks, months, really month, as we clue in for the NBA draft here. Again, here, I think this is quite literally their next offensive possession after that three.
Too strong.
This is something we talked about with Jaden McDaniels, right? Yeah. Like, Jaden McDaniels is an incredible defender. Did a great job on Devin Booker, did a great job on, Jamal Murray throughout the course of that series too, right? But the thing he does have is like kind of a high waist, and Luka is stronger than he is, right? You get that little push off there, that little quick little off arm from Luka. Look at that. That's a thing of beauty right there. Just gets that little off arm to get that little bit of separation. I mean, we're at 10 points in 2.5 minutes right now.
Are we going to talk? How much Mavs Celtics are we going to talk? Because I have a question about who they're going to put on him. And it fits right into what you just said. Do we do it now, or you want me to wait?
We're going to do that Tuesday. We're going to do Mavs Celtics on Tuesday.
Okay.
This one here, just sets up pretty simply. I think this is off of a made bucket. They kind of get into that double drag series real quick, but instead of having Mike Conley as the guy in the second, as the first guy in the double drag, they have him as the low man here, who's guarding two players here in Kyrie and Derek Jones Jr. Because again, off of those screens, this is why I said in the first clip that I think it was scheme based, where they wanted somebody to really sag in. Jaden McDaniels here is like all the way at the foul line, despite the fact that he's guarding Kyrie, right? That's like a really, really far closeout for a shooter like Kyrie. But as you can see, like Jaden kind of backs off, even though they need the help, right? And Luka just gets all the way to the rim like it's nothing. I mean, just an unbelievably special basketball player. We're at 12 minutes in 12 points in 3.5 minutes now. He kind of slowed down in the middle portion of that first quarter and then, got it going again. Going to come up as the trailer.
We've seen him get buckets in a variety of ways already. Catch and shoot three and semi-transition, the pull-up jumper, the little floater. Now we see him snaking a screen into a pull-up jumper again. I mean, he's giving them buckets in every way you can imagine.
Yeah, like this is absolutely sick, right? Like they moved Kyle Anderson onto him instead of Anthony Edwards. I felt like Minnesota throughout the playoffs would start Anthony Edwards on Jamal Murray, on Luka, and then would probably shade him off of it kind of near the middle of the first quarter. And, this is them putting Anderson on him. And, Kyle Anderson's a lot of things. He's a really long defender. I think he's a really smart defender. It's just hard for him to deal with that deceleration from Luka because he's also a little bit slower. Right. So you get to that step back, it's going to be pretty sick. Super high screen there from PJ Washington. Get Kyle Anderson on him again. I love the way that like Luka's clearly calling out like what he wants. Yeah. Spacing wise, he has Josh Green go over to the opposite corner because he knows that, that's who Nickeil Alexander-Walker is on. And I think he likes that as a potential low man option, but instead he just fires from 35 feet like it's nothing. This one, quick little step up, drills the three again, and now he's talking. Now we're at 18 points in 9.5 minutes, and just look at him looking at the crowd, look at him just talking an immense amount of shit like he is the icon that he is. I think he made a couple free throws in there. That might have been for 20 points now that I think about it. Step up into a rescreen there from Lively, and he just keeps the dribble alive and turns the corner on Gobert. Once you turn the corner, Gobert's cooked, right? Like there's
the hesitation stuff is so impressive though. Like he just continually sets guys up and peeks behind the screen and then makes them second guess. And do I have to come? Like I thought he had Gobert. We don't have to get into the Gobert thing because I don't want to become like Gobert's overrated defensively or whatever. I thought he had Gobert guessing all the time and screen stuff up. Is he going to shoot it? Is he going to throw the lob? Yep. Like it's so hard to play Luka because he manipulates you with his eyes and his body and the pace he plays with.
Yep. And then he's talking shit to Gobert after that one. It looks like awesome rebound there from Lively to keep that loose.
That was really good.
To keep it going. Luka, again in transition. I don't know how you end up not picking up the ball there.
That's an awesome relocation from Luka. That's really nice. Yeah. This is off-ball stuff now, which we don't talk about a lot because he plays so much on ball. This is beautiful relocation.
Yeah, and my question is again with Minnesota, and look, it's a 23-point game. Minnesota's reeling at this point. They don't know what's hit them. But nobody picks up the ball. Anthony Edwards has got to go pick up the ball there, in my opinion. It's Derek Jones Jr. If you leave Derek Jones wide open for a three, hopefully you can get that late contest from Kyle Anderson trailing, right? But like you said, relocation, wide open three.
And shout out Derek Jones Jr. for the catch, attack, a closeout. Don't know who you are and what your role is. Drive it into the defense and kick it to the best player on the floor and let him knock down a shot.
100%. And now we're into the second half, and this thing just continued to grow and become a disaster.
Same action, same idea what we showed earlier, or what you showed
100%.
Earlier.
Yeah, this one screen, it's just very clear that it was a strategic decision to me from Minnesota to really help into the paint to try and dissuade any sort of penetration there. But the problem is that if this guy, frankly, Kyrie as well with Luka, if either of those guys are on the weak side wing there, it's just really hard. I don't think that you can really sag in and help like that, even when you want to try and help Rudy in drop coverage. It just creates such a long closeout, and Ant is just frankly not disciplined enough with his closeouts and off-ball defense right now. I think that frankly they put Ant in a tough spot in this game defensively with this, but he's just not an awesome off-ball defender at this point either. At some point, this will keep playing, and we've got, Ant on Luka again, early screen, double drag involving Cat. He was the other guy they tried to involve. And I mean, this is one where Rudy is so deep here that I'm just like not totally sure. Can you tell me what they're doing here? So this is like almost a double drag Spain. It looks like.
No, that's
right?
what I was gonna say. It looks like they're running double drag Spain, and so I wonder if that's what makes if somebody calls out Spain, and that's why Rudy sprints to the rim for some reason here.
So double drag Spain, for people, who might not, be as intricately engaged with basketball as you and I are, right? Double drag Spain is going to be Luka's going to come off of these two high ball screens here, and Kyrie is going to set a back screen likely onto Gobert. He's going to try and set the back screen and then flash up to the top of the key as a, replacement player for guys who are going to vacate. Like PJ will probably go to the wing. Gafford will probably rim run because that's what Daniel Gafford does. And then Kyrie's just going to come up, like I said, and relocate to the top while Luka drives. So defensively here, they have Ant chase all the way over the top instead of switching the first action. Typically, the way that you defend any sort of double drag is that you will have Ant and Towns switch this first one. You'd have Towns on Luka. And it seems like to me, given the way that Towns is chasing, that I kind of think he thinks that they're switching there.
Ant must have called him off later because it did look like he was, if he was going to play that high, he might as well stepped out and tried to hedge and force him back the other way. So it looked to me too like Cat was ready to take him and then try to navigate over, and then Ant called him off.
But this is why you don't do that, because just look at how far Ant is chasing behind the play at this point. Like there's just nothing that can be done. And now because they switched that, Spain action here, where Kyrie is going to come up. He's being guarded by Jaden McDaniels. So,
well, Jaden starts to switch it, and then he changes his mind too.
Yeah, Jaden goes to PJ,
and then
kind of like comes back to, is that THJ?
No, that's Kyrie.
No, it's Kyrie. It's Kyrie. Comes back to Kyrie, and then Cat, because Ant called him off of that original switch, which is why I think Cat is thinking that, okay, we're just going to switch this like you normally do in a double drag. Like this really should be Cat's guy.
Yeah, he's just so far behind because he started to switch and navigate over the top of the screen for a second.
Look, I would bet you, I don't know. I would need to know what the communication was, and I would need to know what their scheme strategy was for those double drags, by and large in the second half, right? It does seem like they made some adjustments in the second half after that catastrophic first half. I would bet you that this is on Ant for calling out a non-switch.
I will also say though, Gobert is
Gobert.
Sorry. my bad. Gobert, the defensive player of the year in the NBA. I don't have very many slip ups, but that one, Gobert, that's a bad one. Gobert is way too deep here. Gafford is still at the 3-point line. I don't know why he has to drop this low.
So my theory on it would be, does he think he's guarding PJ off of a switch potentially?
But he never gets screened or
no, because if you switched, no, it should just be Cat on PJ at that point. And then does he think maybe, yeah, I don't know why he drops all the way.
No, you're right. He's backpedaling. He thinks PJ is going to stay in the dunker, I bet, and he feels like he needs to be able to contest that. Don't you think?
No. I'm thinking that you can see here with McDaniels' arm, that I just covered up. I'm guessing that Jaden called out a switch. I'm guessing Jaden said, like, Rudy, like, deal with him. And maybe like they thought that Mike was going to come up. This is just like really bad defense by and large. Like there's just not another way to put that. Like I get that that's a hard action to guard, but like, yeah, I just don't. The problem is here, you really just need to switch this initial action.
Yeah.
You need to deal with Cat having to deal with Luka at this point. You have to switch this where PJ and Ant stay attached. Cat stays attached to Luka. And then honestly, at that point, I would probably switch this one too, where I would say, Cat, you switch onto Gafford, and then you have Rudy on Luka at that point. You should just switch all this.
Well, at least you're matched up then, right? Like part of the problem we've discussed is that Luka Doncic has the ball with an advantage, and 4/5 of the Timberwolves don't know who they're guarding right now. Like the other 3 of the other guys are like, are we switching? Are we staying? Do I need to get back? Conley's the only dude that's locked in, and Doncic has that many feet, however many feet that is, advantage over Anthony Edwards getting downhill. Like you're screwed now. Like you're way more screwed here than you are if Gobert is just guarding Luka.
Yeah, and look, like you say, Mike's locked in, like he is. He's communicating on the back line. Like he's calling all of this out. He's really trying to make sure that guys know like what's going on here. Yeah, I mean, it just seems like Dallas kind of, this is like the epitome of like Dallas breaking them to me. I think Dallas kind of broke them at this point, and they just like didn't know what they were supposed to do. But to me personally, it looks like Towns is like switching this, and Ant calls a non-switch. There are a lot of guys at fault on this play. Like I don't really want to put it all on Edwards, but like I think that I would bet that a lot of this is on Ant.
Do you give the Mavericks some credit here for these possessions we've watched and some of the stuff they've run that I do feel like has, instead of just giving Luka the ball, giving him one ball screen and saying, go get a bucket, which we know we can do and does happen at times. I feel like we've broke down a lot of Mavs offense where it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. That's unique. That forced the best defense in the NBA to really think and navigate and communicate and break down. I do want to give the Mavs some credit here for designing some of this stuff.
Here's the other thing I want to kind of talk about. I wonder, and look, like not every team has like the rim runners that Dallas does, right? And the shooting around the rim runners that Dallas does. I wonder if this ends up being like a real kind of game changer for how to attack them defensively with Minnesota. A big piece of this is that it's just really hard to deal with Luka. So Jaden McDaniels can like really at the point of attack, like fuck some people up, right? And screw up this set from even getting into its, primary action at the top with the double drag screen, right? I do wonder if teams really start to like hammer those double drags even more often against Minnesota next year if they keep this core together. But we'll talk about that kind of momentarily here because we're going to do the Minnesota Timberwolves offseason preview. But yeah, we spent a lot of time on that play because I do think it's like pretty interesting.
It is
to talk through the way that they defended it. This one here, I think, is the one where Luka starts talking to Snoop and the people around Snoop. Jaden is an unbelievable defender, but like he just can't deal with Luka. He's too strong. And now he's like waving goodbye. Who's crying now, motherfucker? We're going nuts here. Third quarter, again, super high screen. They kind of start to put 2 on the ball and then end up peel switching off of it. Now you've got Luka on Kyle Anderson. This is just a matchup Luka's going to be very comfortable with. And he gets Kyle on his back. He thinks it's a foul. He's like, I'm not going to say anything. Hands up. And finally, I think this might be the last one. This is just like a fun set, right? You've got Lively on the roll.
And then the ball screen,
get the switch, and he just cans one off the backboard. I mean, like, if that's going to happen, that's going to happen. Like, what can you do? So
you alluded to it. How about the Mavericks response though? And I realize like they're up 3-0, they drop 1, it's 3-1, but that would have been I don't want to say like they went to Minnesota. Minnesota should have been crazy motivated. Like, hey, we get this one. We got to go steal one more in Dallas. Then we're back home for game 7. Like we've seen teams put up a fight, and Luka and Dallas just went in there like, nah, like the game 4 was a fluke, whatever. We're coming to your house. And Minnesota didn't win a game at home in this series. Dallas just crushed them in Minnesota. And so I kind of like that mentality that we saw from Dallas of, hey, we're not going to let this thing stretch out. We're not going to wait to go back to Dallas to finish it off. We'll do it here on the road.
Yeah, no, I loved it. The last thing I want to bring up with Dallas is like, there's obviously this conversation happening around Luka Doncic. Like, is he the best player in the world? I mean, where do you, I'll just ask you that. Like, where do you fall in the best player in the world conversation right
Sure,
now?
I'll have the conversation. I mean, I've said all year that it's Nikola Jokic, and now we're seeing Luka do it with a deep playoff run. And if he goes and wins the finals, continuing to play the same way, especially on the defensive end, I will have that conversation. And I think I would really have to really get into who makes their teammates better, who can you build, like some of that type of stuff. But yeah, like he should absolutely be in this conversation. No question.
Yeah. I think where I'm at on it is, I think we're just in an era where there isn't one best player in the world. I think that the title shifts hands regularly. I think that Jokic, particularly, I think that Jokic, Luka, and Giannis are the 3 guys that like have the claim right now. And I still would throw Giannis in there. He was unbelievable this season while dealing with a number of different factors in Milwaukee. I just think that those 3 guys are so close that the title switches hands throughout the course of a season, a playoff run, whatever. And if someone wants to say Luka's the best player in the world, if they win the title, like I'm totally in
Agreed.
favor of that. I feel cool about that. The thing I will say about Jokic this year is I do think that the defense dropped off a fair amount throughout the course of the season. A big thing why he was so great last year is I felt like they could do a little bit more with him defensively. The big forehead, in the YouTube comments brings up Joel Embiid. For 3 months this year, Joel Embiid like very much was probably the best player in the world.
Yeah.
His scoring ability was unbelievable, but it's hard when Joel has not actually made a deep playoff run. Now that Luka has made this, finals run, I do think he belongs in this conversation. I just think that they're all so close that like, I don't know who the number 1 guy is. And I think that I think at this point, like, it's just the reality of the conversation is that it's just going to keep changing hands, and we don't need to like get fixated on it being, I know we all want it to be one guy, but I just don't know that it is one guy right now with how close it is.
I think it's awesome. Like, who's the best player in the world right now? And it's like Luka's probably doing it right now based on this playoff run.
Yeah.
And it's just all context, right? Because to me, that question is different than who was the MVP of the league in 2023, 2024. Those are different questions because the MVP of the league does not take into account anything you've done in the past, playoff runs, anything. It's a regular season award. Who was the most valuable during the regular season? In the same way, I think I vote a little bit different on MVP as opposed to all NBA teams and some stuff like that. So I think when we're just talking who's the best player in the world right now, what we're seeing Luka do in, the prime of the season is very impressive. And especially because I do think there's been a defensive jump. I know other people thought it was really apparent in the regular season. I thought it was at times. I think I was a little slower on that, but in multiple of these playoff games, and there's been some where there wasn't great, and we'll find out again. Listen, if he goes out and he's the finals and the MVP and he beats this finals MVP of the finals, and he goes out and beats this Celtics team and he has to guard, whether it's Drew Holiday or they put him on Derek White or, whoever it is, then so people are going to have a very, very strong argument as him being the best player in the world right now.
Yeah. And, Thunderfant brings up, Shea outplayed Luka in 5 of their 6 games in the series. Like, is he not in the conversation too? I would have Shea 4th. It's just the reality is that Shea has not made this deep playoff run yet. Like, Luka has made the conference finals twice, has made the finals once now. and Shea hasn't gotten the chance to do that yet. You know, he was great. Like, I don't want to take anything away from Shea. It just is, to me, at some level, you have to make the run in a real way. And, you know, I would have Shea ahead of Ant because Ant has only gone like one step further at this point. But, yeah, you know, I would have Shea, frankly, ahead of Jason Tatum at this point, even though Tatum has been incredible. But yeah, like I think that the top 3 tier right now for me is Jokic, Luka, and Giannis. Giannis has won the title. Jokic has won the title. We'll see if Luka can get there. I'm intrigued to see where this goes.
Yeah, and like you say, and like Embiid has, you know, an MVP to his name and all of that, and it's hard to put him in the conversation because we haven't seen it play out in the playoffs because of injuries or otherwise. And so, you know, that's a guy we've seen be insanely dominant in the regular season, and we kind of
the Embiid piece of this is so fascinating because to me, like, the biggest thing that happens with him is, like, I think his body just wears down over the course of the season, and that's just really hard. Like, if they would be better off playing him, you know, 50, 60 games in the regular season and then having him fresh for the playoffs probably. But like, you kind of can't do that with the way their roster is structured and still actually like get to the point where they're winning playoff games. Maybe they can change that this summer. You know, you just make it way harder for yourself getting to the playoffs at that point with like positive potential. Like Dallas was a top 4 seed, at least, you know, having home court in the first round and then, you know, being able to deal with, you know, Oklahoma City in 6 games in the second round. Like it's just, yeah, it's hard. It's the Embiid piece of this conversation is hard because I think that when he is 100%, I think he is unbelievable. I think he is like
both ways, 2-way player too. Like you talking about like impacting the game on the defensive end. Of the guys we've talked about, like do any Giannis, maybe Giannis does. I shouldn't say maybe Giannis impacts the game more.
Yeah. Like at 100%, I think Joel Embiid is probably the best player in the world at 100%. If everybody is at 100%, I think it's probably Joel. But the problem with Joel is that Joel is only at 100%, probably 15% of the time. It feels like 20% of the time.
And we don't know how good he is.
You can't put him into that top tier because of that.
And we haven't seen how good he is in a conference finals, right? Like this is a huge part of that and not everybody can step up to the moment. Like we have seen we've seen Jokic do it. We've seen Giannis do it. We're seeing Luka do it right now. We haven't seen Embiid get the chance, mostly I would say because of injury, but that's a huge part of this equation is in the biggest moments. What do you bring to the table in the deep playoff run?
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay. Let's talk Minnesota offseason now.
Okay.
So the Minnesota Timberwolves enter. I think this is probably the most momentous and important offseason of the Minnesota Timberwolves history. And I do not think I'm exaggerating when I say that. The problem with this part of the conversation, though, is that part of why it's so important is it's based on things that we don't have answers to yet. Like the piece of their situation that is most important is ownership, right? They're in the middle of an ownership kerfuffle, disagreement, whatever you want to call it, right?
What'd you just say?
It's an ownership kerfuffle.
I don't know what that means.
In some ownership tomfoolery is happening, Bryce.
Oh, that's better. I'll use context clues to figure out what you're trying to say.
And I like those are things that we just don't have answers to. Is Mark Lore and Alex Rodriguez, like, are they going to own this team, or is Glenn Taylor going to own this team? Right.
I wish I could have went to a Wolves home game just to see the animosity of these people in the arena together. I've heard other podcasts talk about it and just how kind of awkward it is. I would love to have seen that once because they all showed up to the games apparently.
Yeah, because they're all owners. We're not all friends here, but we're all owners of the team. So again, the problem is that like these are things that we don't have answers to with the Minnesota Timberwolves, right? And so much of their offseason is dependent upon what this answer is, right? They have Anthony Edwards locked in for 5 years, $245 million Supermax. Karl Anthony Towns, 4 years, $221 million. His extension kicks in this year. Rudy Gobert, 2 years, $90 million, but he has a player option for 2025-26, and he's extension eligible this year. Jaden McDaniels, his extension kicks in 5 years, $136. That's so much money locked up in this core. Mike Conley, 2 years, $20 million. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 1 year, $4.3 million. Naz Reid, 2 years, $29 million. Player option 2025-26. They have Leonard Miller, Josh Minot, Wendell Moore, Luka Garza. As people know, I am a big Leonard Miller fan. I think that there's a real chance that like he could play maybe as soon as next year. There are people who like Josh Minot. Shout out old podcast partner Matt Penny, big Josh Minot guy, obviously. Unrestricted free agents: Monte Morris, Kyle Anderson, Jordan McLaughlin, and TJ Warren. The question here is like, can they run this back? I would love to see them run it back.
Yeah.
I think it would be amazing for this team to run it back. But the overarching question here is, what do they do with their front court long term? Right? Really, I think there's a case that you have to make this decision now as opposed to next summer, because both Rudy Gobert and Naz Reid have player options. And if you get nothing for both of those guys, it gets very complicated in a hurry for you if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, part of this could be answered by a Rudy Gobert extension. Rudy Gobert is extension eligible. You could decline the player option and extend. You could, have the player option and extend off the player option where he gets paid, 45 for 2 years. Rudy at this point is 31 years old, turns 32 like in a month. By the end of next year, he'll turn 33 in a month. So that player option is for his age 33 season. So really you'd be extending his deal for 34, 35 years old, right? What is the number that you would be willing to do that for, knowing that A, Rudy won Defensive Player of the Year this year, but B, Rudy is also this guy who stays in unbelievable shape, ran out games throughout the playoffs like it was nobody's business. In the series against Denver in Game 7, he was the guy that was completely changing the game because he is just so capable of running out games and having energy deep into long series. So you would expect, frankly, that a guy that has not really had a ton of injury history, right? If you go through since 2018-19, 81 games, 68 games in the COVID shortened season, 71 games in another COVID shortened season, 66 games out of 82 in 2022, then 70 and 76. Guy that plays a lot of minutes, but is getting older, but stays in unbelievable shape. I mean, what's the number there? I don't know what the number is for him, especially when you start accounting for the TV deal that's coming in.
But is it reasonable to keep him roughly the same number because of some of the flaws you could point to in terms of, he stays in great shape, but you are a 32-year-old 7-footer. You don't space the floor for us.
Yep.
You're not a great passer. You're defensive player of the year, all of this stuff. You stayed on the floor in the playoffs, except all of the great things. But I think some of the limitations there can keep the money down to where, hey, let's not give you something crazy, but we'll extend it out and we'll give you this money into your 34, 35 season. Maybe there's some sort of option or non-guaranteed on the age 30, I'm not as good with the contracts and what's allowed and what's not on some of this stuff, but I don't want to go crazy with Gobert, into the 50s and some of those things.
I don't either, but if you're him, do you think that will be out there for you at age 34?
So that's what I was going to say is if he hit, when could he hit unrestricted free agency? Technically after next year, right? He could decline a player.
Yeah, he could decline the player option and hit it after next year if he wants to. So like, you look at the money that could be out there, like, I mean, the cap is going to rise again. The cap will be rising by 10% every year here moving forward, right? So it goes from, 141 in 2024-25 to 155 in 2025-26 to 170 in 2026-27 to 187 in 2027-28 and then up to 206 by 2028-29, right? Like the cap, the way it's going to rise and rise and rise, if I'm him, like I probably don't accept anything lower than 50, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I tried to go and look like projected cap space in that offseason, but I mean, teams are just, they have so much projected right now because you don't know what's going to happen with free agents and extensions and stuff. It's just, is 4 years, 200 million actually going to be out there as an unrestricted free agent? Like, is for a 33-year-old big who doesn't space the floor, like I think some of that stuff limits his market because some teams aren't going to feel like they can absorb that type of player. On top of the fact that at some point, even if he keeps in great shape, he's going to start to diminish. And as the defense diminishes, that makes up less and less for his shortcomings on the offensive end. So I wonder if he could go get $50 million a year on the open market. And some of that, depends on the right team, who else hits the market, those type of things.
Yeah.
But I almost think him staying with Minnesota on 40, 45, something like that. I just wonder if locking that in is actually what would be best for it. Like if that's as good as he could do for an organization, I assume appreciates him.
Could you do like 2 years, 90 million basically on top of the 2 years 90 million that he has, and then like he's locked in for 180?
So that's kind of what I was thinking. And again, with the salary cap going up, I like that if I'm Minnesota in terms of what by the time it hits, and that would be 26, 27, he's essentially making that year the same that he's making now, but on a salary cap that's exponentially more. And so that contract looks way better. So that's where I would be at. And I don't know that I'd want to give him a whole lot more than 2 years because 32, 33, would you say 34, 35 season? I would start to get nervous about going any more than those couple of years with his age and his size.
The other option is trading him this summer, right? And I do think that he would get like real value. He wouldn't get what they paid for him, but like he'd get real value. They could also look to trade Karl Towns this summer if they would want to. The other guy that like they really should probably look at is Naz Reid here. And I know that like Naz is beloved in Minnesota now because of the way he's like worked himself up and has become this unbelievable basketball player. But like, if you're them and you have this guy who's got 1 year left, if I'm them, I'm assuming that he wants to start somewhere because he's earned that right at this point. Like Naz Reid has unequivocally earned the right to start somewhere. He's that good, and he is, worthy of that capability, I think. Averaged 13 points in 24 minutes a night, knocks down shots from three at a 41% clip, 48% from the field this year. Like he has potential to be like one of the awesome offensive starters in the league. And I would assume that next summer there will be serious bidders for his services.
Yeah. Now I keep going back and forth of what's the front. If you move one of them, what's the front court that makes the most sense? Like what if I told you they were going to move one, which starting front court makes the most sense in terms of, is it Gobert and Towns and you roll with that? Is it Gobert and Naz Reid? Do you like the Cat and Naz Reid starting front court if they did decide to trade Gobert? And so like, that's where I continue to try to think. And then you have to weigh in the value and the return of what you could get for each of these guys.
So here's the big thing. Rudy to me is the guy that is like the outlier in terms of age timeline, right?
Yeah, sure.
Other than Mike Conley. Like Mike is 37, but like Mike has 2 years left, and the number is so cheap that it's whatever. Karl Anthony Towns, I believe, is what? He turns like 27 next year.
He's actually a little older than
he turns
29. Yep.
Yeah, turns 29 next year. So like not that much younger than Gobert. And like frankly, the way Gobert like keeps his body in shape, like if you wanted to bet on Gobert like staying in better condition, I would listen to that at least.
How much better is the Cat return than the Reed return considering the Cat contract?
It's a great question. It's a really great question.
Because listen, I mean, Pistons fans have talked about this going back because, the one thing we need to talk about too real quick is like Minnesota with the ownership situation. They've only paid $25 million in their history since 2002 of the luxury tax or whatever. So like, this is where this conversation comes from, is they're going to be so far over and the luxury tax they're going to have to pay and all of that. And so, Pistons fans have been talking about Karl Anthony Towns for a while now. And every time I'm like, yeah, he makes sense in terms of what they need. But that's 50, 53, 57, $61 million player option in 27, 28. Now, Naz Reid's due for a big contract if he gets traded also. Not those numbers, but it's going to be, I would assume he would ask for some good numbers.
Oh, he's going to ask for at least 25, I would think.
That's
like
that, yeah.
It's got to be the number for him at this point. The team that has always made the most sense for me for Karl Towns is Toronto, because you want the second star next to Scotty Barnes. You want the guy who can space the floor at the big position next to Scotty Barnes. Like that is to me always the spot that has made the most sense. Do they have an offer that makes sense? You could put in Bruce Brown and his, picks up his $23 million team option. And then you could do like the 19th overall pick and like Grady Dick, maybe. Honestly, like does Barrett make sense for them? I don't know that I would. I don't know.
Coming off, would you bring him off the bench? That would be like your bench bucket getter.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the other team that like makes sense for him is the Pelicans too, like next to Zion.
Yeah, sure.
If Zion be like your primary playmaker, and you do like, is there like a Brandon Ingram for Karl Towns swap in theory?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you don't have to move, and you just go small. Maybe you go smaller there and start him and McDaniels, and you still bring Naz Reid off the bench.
And then like, what else does it take with Brandon Ingram? Like, it would take more than Brandon Ingram, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think they'd get more for Karl Towns. There are enough landing spots for Karl to where, like, I think they would get more. But again, like, I would love to see them run it back. I really, truly would. I think it would be amazing for, like, the city of Minnesota and to see all of this. It's just that, like, you can't actually extend Naz Reid right now because Naz is only coming off of year 1 of his deal. So, like, he is unextendable at this point. Rudy is extendable. What if he turns down the numbers that you're comfortable with? I actually think that then that's when this comes to a head this summer, and you end up having to make a decision, not even necessarily based on like the ownership and the money situation, but more based on we can't lose these guys for nothing and continue to build for the Anthony Edwards era as we keep moving forward into it.
How problematic is a Naz Reid, Karl Anthony Towns front court? Obviously, you would trade Gobert for some stuff, or maybe it's Leonard Miller. It becomes a third big. Like, are you terrified of that defensively, considering what you have in Ant and Jaden McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and how else you could build out this roster if you got off the Gobert contract? Like, are you just like, is the ceiling there just scary to like not as good because you don't have that defensive player of the year behind them? Because offensively, I feel like that could be pretty scary with what we've seen from Anthony Edwards. Conley can still shoot it. And then you have 2 floor spacing bigs playing off of all of that. Can you make up for their lack of rim protection and defense with this elite, ideally perimeter defense?
I think no.
I think so. I think no also. And part of that's also because we saw, like, as much as we love Mike Conley here, that's probably also like a neutral point of attack perimeter defender at best. Like we just talked about how they, the Dallas Mavericks hunted him over and over and over. So I agree with you. I was just curious if you thought that could work, especially on the defensive end.
Yeah, I think my answer to that is no. I mean, in the playoffs this year for Minnesota, Rudy played 500 minutes, sat for 256 minutes. In the minutes when Rudy was on the court, they were a plus 9.6. In the minutes when Rudy sat, they were a minus 7.4.
Yeah.
So, but look, like the defensive rating was like only like 2 points worse per 100. So like maybe, who knows? I kind of think you need to keep Gobert. I think he's the most important of the three, but he's also the one that doesn't fit the age timeline and one of the ones that has like the contract thing forthcoming. I really think that like the most important thing for them is figuring out a Gobert number that makes sense for everybody.
Sure.
If they can extend Rudy this summer, like so many of their issues kind of move to the back burner and like you can figure things out kind of like maybe you're trading Naz Reid and getting like more of a perimeter 4-man, right? Maybe you're trading Karl Towns and like changing your roster, right? But I think that's kind of where they're at this point, right? Is they need to figure out the front court situation. And if it's Rudy just signing an extension, like that's the answer to me that like works for them.
And ultimately you would rather sign Rudy to an extension. I guess you can't do anything with Naz, so that doesn't matter. And run it back at least with the front court. Like that's what
I would, unless I got like a monster offer for Naz Reid.
Sure. Okay.
Like it would take like first round pick, awesome prospect, like kind of thing for Naz Reid.
Sure.
Which I don't know that anybody's going to offer quite that much for Naz, much as I like him. Other than that, the big question is like, are you relying on, the rookies that you potentially take at 27 and 37, or like, whatever combination of the picks that you use to come in and be able to play? Or are you relying upon re-signing your own veteran free agents because, Monte Morris like needed to play in the playoffs at times. Kyle Anderson, we just watched him guarding Luka at times, right? Like he's actually a more important player than what I think he gets credit for being for them. Like, I know he only played 15 minutes a night, but having like length and, ability is valuable and like intelligence out there with Kyle Anderson. I think that like I don't think you'd find a minimum guy to replace Kyle Anderson, I guess is my point. Jordan McLaughlin, like you could bring back one of him or Monte Morris, I think. But you need to find answers either on the free agency market, or you need to have, Wendell Moore, who I'm not a huge fan of and never really have been. Leonard Miller, who, isn't really the position that you need. Josh Minot, who isn't really the position that you need to step up. Like you need to find perimeter answers. To me, at number 27, like their draft board should look like Tyler Kolek at number 1.
Yeah, sure.
I love Kolek. I have a top 20 on him at this point. I don't think he would get to 27, but like if Baylor Shireman got to 27, that would be great for them. If Jalen Tyson, I think would be like an interesting name for them. I think AJ Mitchell is kind of an interesting name for them.
I was say, who's the other guy that can play on ball a little bit more? I think we both think Bub is going to be gone by then. We both think Kolek probably is, but I think he's the most likely of the guys we're going to talk about. And listen, I like Shireman and some of the names, but the next, like, what about Jamal Shed? That's your guy.
Sure. Great fit. Like I think Jamal and Kolek would be able to come in like relatively early in their careers and eat backup point guard minutes.
So what about that? Like, what if you could double up with Kolek at 27 and Shed at 37 and just feel like you got this?
No. You don't need two of those guys.
You want to double up on them?
One.
Okay.
Yeah, you need one. If you could get Shed at 37 and, draft your wing at 27, great. I'm all for it. Does Ryan Dunn make sense for them? Just like with their defensive, everything that they're building, or do they want to go more like I don't know, like Deron Holmes is a big, but like he could give you flexibility to move read for one of those guys, right? You could go like Khalil Ware, Deron Holmes, and like hope that they can play earlier. Um,
I mean,
but that feels dangerous to me still.
so like Shireman at 27, Shed at 37 is like a really,
Oh,
really
it's amazing.
exciting draft for them.
That's like a Sam Vecenie draft. Like, yeah, we're and by the way, like Minnesota does not draft like this. You know, under Tim Connolly. Like Tim Connolly is a guy that has tended to draft a bit younger throughout the course of his time. You know, Matt Lloyd, you know, their assistant GM runs, he's one of the best scouts in the league, you know, does an unbelievable job of you know, finding options and different things. You know, but look at the guys they've drafted, right? Like Leonard Miller, Josh Minot, younger guys to be sure, Jade McDaniels, you know, that was before Tim was there, but younger guy, obviously. Like they've just tended to draft younger earlier on. But look, like I the guys I would be looking at, I'd be looking at, you know, Shireman, Jalen Tyson, Jamal Shed, AJ Mitchell, Kolek certainly. Again, like I don't know if Kolek gets there or not, but that's probably what I'm looking at if I'm them.
I think that point guard room is really interesting. And the reason I brought up two young guys, and I realize you don't want to draft, you know, like that just, it's hard to develop both of them at the same time. So, but the reason I like Conley's 37 during next season, Morris is not only a free agent, but also, you know, he's 29. Like you're just, I don't know how much confidence I have. And Morris was like barely playable at times in the playoffs. So I think just a real infusion of youth and energy and all of that is something I would be really excited about. And so, yeah, you probably don't want to make it two rookies, but I would not hate them bringing in a rookie and you know, another free agent or something like that.
Yeah.
Who, you know, we brought up Dennis Smith Jr. the other day. I don't know if he's like, if he's a minimum guy or not. You know, we brought up Chris Dunn, like all of those different, I don't remember who we were talking about for all those names. I think I would bring in 2 point guards. I mean, I guess if I brought Monte Morris back, I wouldn't, but I don't know that I wouldn't look at bringing in 2 new ones. I guess if you bring back Monte Morris, then probably just one does it. But I think they really need to look at that point guard spot.
Yeah. I mean, like man, like it's hard. I'm like trying to find like is there like a Nas Reed for like a potential point guard option deal available? And I don't know that I can see one that like makes total sense. I mean, the funny thing is like if Tyus Jones had like one more year left on the deal, I would be like, could you do like Nas Reed for Tyus Jones and other stuff?
I
right?
literally was typing Tyus Jones into my browser just to see exactly, but yeah, I mean, unrestricted free agent. So
yeah. And you know, like Runner Dude in the comments brings up betting on a late first round pick sounds risky considering Rudy's age in their window. I agree, but the problem is that this is kind of the reality of like the second apron and these teams. Like you're gonna have to hit on your draft picks, otherwise it's going to be really hard to build depth. And remember, look, it might take a couple of years, but yeah.
We're talking about guys coming off the bench as well that play, you know, how many ever minutes during the regular season and probably 15 minutes during the the postseason. And the guys we've mentioned are older prospects in terms of Kolek and Jamal Shed. And so that's, you know, like Bub, I think we're both super excited about, but does he make as much sense if he's there? Like, I mean, it would be exciting for them, but he's a little bit younger and maybe take a little bit more time to be ready.
Oh, I mean, I don't think there's any way Bob's getting.
No, 100%.
If Bob's getting to 27, then like absolutely take Bob Carrington.
Yes.
Bob's not getting to 27. Yeah. Is there like a weird Nas Reed and stuff for Anthony Simons move?
What do the Blazers do with their other bigs? Just move them in tertiary moves?
I mean, I'm okay with like a Reed DeAndre Ayton thing. I mean, I like Robert Williams, like we don't know what he is anymore because of the injuries at this point, but like that's really the only big you're working around is DeAndre Ayton, right?
So Nas Reed for Anthony Simons and Duop Reith?
No, I'm thinking it would be Nas Reed and other stuff for Simons.
Yeah,
like, maybe I'm wrong about that.
No. You send other stuff too. If I'm the Wolves, I want Reith back as well to like give me a spacing big off the bench.
Yeah, it's a good idea too. I'm for it.
What else can Minnesota add to that, though?
I mean, like you'd have to
sweeten it.
like Leonard Miller and the 27th pick, maybe. Like, I don't know if that's enough though. Yeah, I don't know if that's enough. Yeah, I mean, like Naz Reid for Jaden Ivey, like that doesn't really work for Minnesota, I don't think, because I don't think Jaden's ready yet.
Yeah, I don't know that he's. Yeah,
I don't think he's quite ready yet. So I don't know. Minnesota's in a weird spot. A big piece of this is, they're going to have to figure out what's going on with the ownership situation. They're going to have to figure out what's going on with a potential Gobert extension and kind of go from there. I mean, I think Rudy would get real value on the market if they do end up having to move him because he won't extend. I think that, Naz Reid certainly would have a ton of value. So yeah, we'll see what it looks like. Okay, Bryce, are you ready to talk about Tidjane Salaun?
Let's do it.
So Tidjane Salaun is a guy who's certainly getting top 10 buzz right now, certainly lottery buzz at least. And I feel like I've been talking about this for a couple of months on the show at this point, but Salaun is a guy that NBA teams are a lot more excited about than what the public was and has been. I think the public has like finally caught up is maybe a fair way to categorize it. It took a while, but like, I think he's a good player, but we're going to break down tape here from, another French league playoff game. Salaun's Cholet team played Paris in the playoffs. And again, much like we did with Risache breaking down his best game in the French league playoffs, we're going to break down Salaun's best game in the French league playoffs, where I think he had like 19 points, 8 rebounds. This is the May 15th game, right? Interesting player. For people who don't know, I would say Tidjane Salaun is 6'9" without shoes, somewhere in that ballpark, maybe like 6'8", 7'5", in that range, 6'8", 5", maybe. 7'2" wingspan, I would guess. Maybe 7'1" wingspan. I'm just like kind of ballparking these measurements. Sure. We should get them later this week.
We should get them soon, right?
From Eurocamp, but we'll, see if that happens. Big physical frame, as we'll talk about. We can bring up the tape now as we're going. He is enormous for an 18-year-old.
Yes.
Like, he's a big dude.
Yep.
So, he's kind of behind someone right now, but here. So this is Tidjane Salaun. It's funny. I was talking to a scout for a team that came over to the Blitz in September. And I asked him, look, like right now, the international class, like, outside of Risache and like a couple other guys, like doesn't look super wild this year. Who's the guy that you think will like move up? And he immediately said Salaun. And that was back like in September. So I've kind of had my eye on him since then. Salaun's game, before we like really dive into this, I think of him right now as more of like an Aaron Gordon style garbage man than a like skilled 4-man that I feel like he gets billed as a lot of the time. How do you feel about that?
It's funny you say that because I've moved him up on my board. Again, I don't know who we were talking about, but we were trying to find an Aaron Gordon type player for one of the teams we were discussing.
For Oklahoma City.
Okay.
Particularly.
No, yes. And it was like, man, there aren't as many of these guys in the league as what I would have guessed. And then as I continue to read my notes on Salaun, off-ball cutter, good off-ball instincts, offensive rebound, plays super hard defensively, like those type of things. I was like, man, I may not be valuing this archetype enough because I can, like when I dock him, it's the 3-point percentage isn't good. The rim finishing, I'm sure we'll talk about. Real question mark there. But the archetype is something that I was like, we talk about needing to find this type of player. And so like you saying that is exactly what I've tried to envision in my head.
And on top of it with him, I think that the jumper looks okay. Like it's going to take a couple of years for him to like be a consistent 3-point shooter, but like I think that it's going to look okay, and we'll kind of talk about it. Let's just maybe start breaking down the tape and people can see what we're talking about as we go, right? Yeah. So as I circled a minute ago, Salaun is the guy with the ball in his hands. He just handed the ball off there to his point guard and then kind of rolls back up, replaces. I think he does everything very decisively.
Sure. Yeah.
I think he does everything very decisively, and I think he's very, relatively quick with his decision-making for a younger player. And on top of that, he plays so hard. Like he just plays
hard.
So hard. He has incredible competitive spirit, incredible energy. And I really love it. This is a great assist. He had 3 assists in this game, if I remember correctly. Really, really just an excellent, all around kind of role player to me right now for Cholet.
Very deliberate action right there. Like he comes off, knows that he's supposed to roll back, catches, and immediately knows where he wants to go with the ball. He's not a creator. Like if you're looking for a guy that's going to do stuff with the ball in his hands and break down the defense that way, this isn't your guy. But in the role that he's going to have to play, making those quick decisions, being a connector is important. And just talking about how hard he plays, I put in my notes from like the first time I watched him, Sam, he like makes a difference in offensive transition. He runs so hard in transition offense. He doesn't just get himself buckets. He gets his teammates buckets because of the gravity that he draws. And I don't write that about a lot of players throughout this class. I mean, there's guys that are good in transition and you make notes of it. His really, really stood out to me.
Yeah. Big Mike S13 in the YouTube comments asks, do we see him as a better prospect than Ousmane Dieng was? I do. I think he's a way more interesting prospect than Dieng was. I was never a big Dieng fan though.
They're different players though, right? So I was on a Thunder
Very different players.
Yeah, I was on a Thunder pod the other day and they asked me to compare and I had to give them complete transparency. I wasn't doing this in that draft, not at this level anyway. And so I wasn't super familiar, but as we talked about what Dieng was pitched at and has tried to be, I'm like, oh, no. We're talking about 2 entirely different players between Dieng and Salaun.
Totally right. So this one here, he's just going to circle him for the most part, especially early. He's this guy here. You're going to see him. He comes up. I think that like he navigates these screen actions well. Kind of hedges out real quick and guards in space, super active, super energetic. Yeah. I think his teammate kind of gets called for a foul there behind, but like you can just see the activity and the energy defensively, right? He's very mobile, I think, on the perimeter for a 6'9" guy, let's call him, without shoes.
Can you go back? Because I think what's impressive was I think he was he hedged first and then his teammate got hung up on the screen. So then he had to make another effort. So here he's going to hedge high. His teammate should navigate that. He doesn't. And then he almost turns into drop coverage because his teammate still hasn't got through the screen. So you talk about multiple efforts and being able to do 2 different things. And one of them wasn't the scheme. That's really good for, again, 18 years old, doesn't turn 19 till a month after summer league is over.
Yep. No, just really, really active and like the high hands.
Yes.
And, just plays really, really hard. Plays really, really hard. I think he's going to be like a really good defender is kind of where I'm at. When I watch him, I just think of a guy that is probably going to turn out to be a good defender once the processing stuff comes around. This one, here he's guarding on the weak side, has to guard 2 there, ends up having to get caught like in the middle there. But that's a really hard play for an 18-year-old playing professionally, right? Like he's on the weak side here. His low man here is tagging. He's, preparing for this guy right here to roll all the way to the rim, which means Salaun here is responsible for 1, 2 guys, and he has to be able to play both of these guys, right? So he kind of sinks back into this area in between the 2 of them. He takes away the pass here. I think it's probably, I don't know enough about the scout that they're playing, right? Like, I don't know if they want one of these guys to shoot versus the other. Him, number 20, being the taller guy, I would assume that they would prefer him to shoot. think that's Janssen maybe. And he just like misses this easy bunny. It doesn't look great on its face, but like that's a hard defensive possession. And like that's energetic. I like the fact that he's guarding 2 there.
I like the process. I love guys that understand that they're in rotation enough to take away the one more pass. He just overdoes it a little bit and completely puts himself out of position. Now, scheme may ask him to do this. Like you said, maybe this dude is like, and on our high school team, we call shooters and drivers. Maybe they want this dude to drive, right? He ends up missing. I don't know enough about the opponent here. I think he overplays it too much, but I love that he sees what is going on. I think you can coach him up to the next spot. Like, don't sink as much as you did. Don't overplay it quite as much. Use your length to take away the one more pass. Make him ball fake and go over the top, bounce pass to make it a little slower.
Yep. So Salaun here again, weak side of the action. Why didn't that get removed? Okay. So he's just always available, right? Like you can see he's always available. Again, his man, the low man, has to tag in this guy here because you have a ball screen here where he's on the weak side, and this man, number 8, who I believe is Leon Kratzer, is going to be rolling to the rim. He rolls to the rim, gets the ball. Salaun right there for the closeout. Great defensive possession.
Watch him open his hips here because the offensive player attacks his high foot, his top foot, and he's able to open his hips, but not so much that he can't cut him off. That's really good on ball defense right there.
That's absolutely perfect team defense. The closeout is perfect. Flipping his hips is textbook. They get the ball, just like absolutely perfect. And by the way, he scores 19 points in this game. Like we haven't even talked about, any scoring yet, right? And we'll talk about the offense. But again, like you can see him bouncing around, super energetic, right? They just decide to switch here. He's like on a guard now. He navigates like all of this action super well, gets beaten, right? And you don't love that he gets beaten. I think that like he just kind of gets bouncy a little bit too often, right? Like he just like kind of bounces up and down, falls for that screen there, and just gets totally beat, forces the help. That's a wide open 3 that's like kind of on him. But again, like as he gets older, I kind of can see a vision for how this would work really, really well.
I do think screen navigation is one of his weaker points from the first time, and it does for young kids. But again, what I like when you talk about process, so here I think watch what he does though. He gets beat. He sees his teammate come from the help in the corner, and he is pill switching to the corner if his man had decided to make the pass or what. So again, he gives multiple efforts, and he understands the idea of what he's supposed to do, even if he's not doing it perfectly yet.
100% right. So this one here, he's catching, we're firing from 3, right? So this is the first time that we get a real shot to take a look at his 3-point mechanics, right? So, almost everything it feels like for him is off the hop.
Yep.
Mechanically, high finish.
Yeah.
Gets the lower half involved. I think that there's probably, just based off the way that the ball comes out of his hand, I would think that there's probably some offhand involvement there. But again, like those mechanics look clean to me. Like I think he's probably going to be able to shoot it.
Yeah, I put in my notes. I'm interested to watch these because in my notes I had early in the season that he was a little slow, and that one didn't look as slow as what I had thought. So maybe he was able to speed things up throughout the season.
Has made 33.9% of his catch and shoots this season on 180 3-point attempts, according to Synergy. That is, a good enough building block, I think is what I would say. Not like an amazing one, but it's good enough. Ball comes back out to him after the miss, makes the extra pass. Awesome play. Just, misses the shot, but stays engaged with the play. This one comes up to the wing, kind of shot fakes it. This is where we can kind of start to get into like the finishing stuff.
Yeah.
This is a foul. He draws a foul here. So like positive play, right? I like that he attacks his man's top foot, can get, downhill because of the athleticism. The thing I notice on his drives is like, look at the takeoff point, right? I
Yeah.
think
Just take one more dribble.
Yeah, just very, very far. I think he kind of gets worried by, this is Nadir Heafy here, who's coming down to, kind of, I don't even know that I would call this a dig. It's just like more of like a stunt dig here. But like him coming down, I think kind of gives Salaun like some nerves a little bit, and he picks it up. Yeah, he comes up, misses the shot. I grabbed some free throws as well that we'll kind of talk about. So here,
75% from the free throw line on the year. So as you were talking about just the numbers.
To me, everything looks pretty clean here. I will say that like you can kind of see like the offhand thumb kind of get involved.
You can see, because we can see the back of his hand with his offhand, which means he turned it as he was going into the jumper.
Yeah. Like you can kind of see right in there that like the thumb is like kind of involved a little bit. That's fixable. Like that's stuff that you can work with for sure. Like you said, 75% from the line, shoots a very high ball. We'll see more free throws as we go through this, right? Again, here defensively, he's off the ball right here, kind of working through all sorts of early action from Paris, ends up, kind of switching onto Heafy here, and then just like decides to like peel switch onto that guy. Keeps communicating throughout it though. Like that's the thing. Like when you see him underneath the rim here, like I think you'll notice that like he kind of calls out to one of his teammates, like that he's kind of going, and that he like kind of made that move. Now he's jumping around. He's going to like try and trap. He's just very active and energetic. Like to me, like he kind of blows this entire action up just by being like kind of early and aggressive here. Like even just look at the start of it. Like this is a funky action where they try to run like a flare to get Heafy loose. Heafy's like this awesome scorer. He's a draft prospect last year. I frankly think he should have gotten stashed. And again, like they just keeps calling out peel switches, keeps making these crazy scramble switches, just, active and energetic and aggressive. And I love the way that like, you can tell he really looks at the scout and like understands the scout based on how he positions his body. Right? Like he's constantly positioning his body in ways that like almost certainly have to come from the scout to me.
Yeah. He does get a little bounce. You mentioned that, or like at times he's just a little
bouncy.
He's got to slow himself down just a little bit at times, but I would rather that than the alternative.
Yeah. It's that, like, I would rather have the activity. So, here in the corner, my circles just get worse and worse as I use this little pen tool. It's the best.
It's been a little rough. Nice.
So that's a cut there. Really sharp cut all the way to the rim. Finds just that little open area really, really well. We'll get to that here now where, as soon as he sees that this guy is, realizing that he's probably got a 1-on-2 on the weak side, his head's turned. He's looking at the ball. Awesome pass, and he's just available in there. One thing I will say about Salaun is does not have a ton of vertical pop to me.
Sure.
More of a long, like, laterally mobile player than like a particularly vertical player. This season, in half court settings, he has made just 43.6% of his layups, which is a crazy low number. Like almost for someone who's this big and long, like almost an impossibly low number.
Yeah.
For someone who also has like really low or really, decent touch as well, and is coordinated on some level, at least. We'll talk about like some of the coordination stuff later, but like a very weird thing that he loses his touch, this much around the basket.
Yeah. No, and that's what I mean. I was just scouring my scout on him, and nowhere do I mention good vertical pop or anything like that. I didn't mention it being negative, but that kind of tracks that I can't remember anything that just really stands out with like, oh man, that's real big time explosion or anything. I mean, obviously he looks good when he gets out in transition, but
No, I agree. So, again, right around half court, Heafy sets this early screen, just kind of gets caught, right? Yep. That's a pretty negative one to me, where he just gets caught. Can't get caught early in transition like that. You're going to get hit a little bit too easily. This one in the corner, weak side corner now, coming across, bouncy, available as the low man, covers ground for the closeout. Does a fantastic job there.
Yeah.
Exactly what you want to see from him. Exactly what you're hoping to see from a
really
teenager.
Nice closeout
in that setting. So this one, again, thinks he has an angle, gets the drive, finishes at the rim. This is just
that's nice.
A good finish, right? You get this early like cross screen out of horns where he's able to catch this, get downhill. I love the inside hand finish. I think his footwork kind of lets him down from time to time.
Like right here, I feel like he should be putting this down with his inside hand, really stretching, but he plays through some contact, which is nice. I mean, the defender has his hand on his hip the whole time. So,
yep. Does a great job getting all the way to the rim, finishing. This one, misses the free throw again. Like, I don't really have a ton to say about the free throw here. Kind of saw it from the back, but I feel like he gets his legs a little bit less involved in this one, maybe, than what the previous one was. Misses. It has the ball in the wing there, kicks it out to the top. I love how he just like replaces to the top. Just has like good natural instinct to me. It feels like whenever he's moving around and roaming around.
Was the shot clock running out there?
Good question.
Yeah. Okay. That's why I didn't pass.
3 seconds left on the shot clock. Yeah. I mean, that's tough.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's fair.
It's like a scramble situation. Like it's whatever. But again, like you just take a look at the shot, right? Like this is a tough one where he's like kind of wrong footed. I do think that he is a player right now, like needs to have his feet set.
Sure.
Like no movement shooting
Not
whatsoever right now. Like nothing remotely like that. I think that he's really a guy that has to have the feet set before he's going to be able to shoot it at a decent clip right now. Obviously like you would like to see him be able to knock down those shots, but it's just going to be hard. This one, I like that he makes that like extra, move down, right? He's the last guy back. Nobody picks up Nadir Heafy like coming across. He kind of can't make an early read because he's same side of the action, right? Like he's same side of the ball here. If he makes this read to rotate now, I mean, that's just like the easiest corner kick out in the world.
Yeah.
Ball comes out. He makes that little scramble rotation where he covers like ground though in a real way.
He makes the offensive player feel him. Sure.
Yeah. So really smart, high energy, high effort. Never have to worry about that. This is a really good defensive rebound, I thought, where, it doesn't have to get a body on anybody, but it does end up being like a contested situation with their big where he's able to grab the ball. I will note there are some like coordination things where I see him where like it doesn't feel like he's like 100% like in control of his limbs and like balanced in the way you would like to see. Like this should be a turnover at the end of the day.
Yeah.
His man like makes like a miracle, saving play, but that's one that like should be a rebound and a turnover. This one, I think he gets kind of caught high there, to be honest, but gets called for the foul, puts himself in like a tougher spot. But, as you can see here, he's just like kind of high and like, it almost feels like he's like losing track of how deep in the corner his man is. And even for like the most athletic guy laterally, when your back is all the way turned like this, there's just no way. Like you're not going to be able to stop that guy from driving into the paint. You're going to put yourself in a difficult spot. He ends up fouling here. There are some like lower end plays that he makes on the defensive end.
Yeah, I was gonna say
concerned
there
me.
are times where I don't love his body positioning off the ball. And it's not like a huge thing. I think it'll be something he'll fix, but like just little stuff like that where he gets a little too high. I think sometimes he gets turned around. Sometimes he like will spin all the way around as he's trying to figure it out. And I think it's because he's always wanting to be active. I think it'll sort itself out. There's going to be times where he's going to get beat during his rookie season, especially, but he's going to make up for it with the multiple efforts.
Yep. As you can see off of movement again, loves the shot fake off of movement, gets back into the dribble handoff. They get into a ball screen, replaces to the top. Now he's driving, right? And loses the ball.
Just he wasn't. So we've seen 2 clips now where the off-ball defender has dug at him, and I feel like one play wasn't egregious. I just thought it was wrong where he ended up getting fouled and going to the free throw line. And then here they just catch him completely off guard and he's not ready for it because his teammate's wide open.
Yeah, I don't feel great about him putting the ball on the deck right now,
Agreed.
to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't feel particularly great about like the skill level in general with Salaun. But this one here, weak side corner.
Great cut.
I like the cut there.
Yeah.
I think that cut actually opens up this 3 ball.
Absolutely. Right? 100%.
So, he comes up, they do an exchange. He cuts that way. Number 10.
Oh, that's a cut assist or however you want to say it. I mean, that dude
number 26 has to shoot that way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's perfectly. It's been timed both times too, Sam. Like I think so. Like cutting, you can't just cut at any time. You have to wait for the right time to do it. And as much as we talk about him kind of like always bouncing and being ready, he has been able to be patient on the 2 examples and then cut at the right time to attack the defense.
Yep, that's right. Leads to this 3. Great cut, cut assist. I'm all for that as a like stat to use. But activity and like energy, right? That's the thing. Again, cut, perfect timed cut. Again, that's what he does well. Like he cuts really well. And again, that's why the name like Aaron Gordon, like comes up to me when I watch him. Now, the problem with him and comparing him to Aaron Gordon is he is nowhere near as athletic as Aaron Gordon or vertically.
Or do you think he has the feel? Like, do you think he's going to pass in some of those things as well as, and definitely doesn't have the handle? You think he can get to the same level with that type of stuff? Definitely not the athlete. Like that's not even a question. Can he get to some of the feel, the dribble?
Aaron was more advanced at Arizona, like running ball screens occasionally and things like that.
But it doesn't matter, I guess, for the archetype that you're going to want. Like maybe that stuff doesn't matter at all.
It does. I think it does. Like if he can shoot it, it matters less. But
sure.
like,
yeah,
it definitely does matter. I think being able to like make decisions on the fly and like process basketball. Right. So, again, weak side corner here, now strong side corner. Again, I love the little, like, it's almost like a shake action where he's like coming up to the top. This is one where I think his footwork just like totally lets him down and he gets bailed out by a foul call. Right.
Yeah.
So, again, pass fake into the drive. The thing about the handle too, like you can see it, like this is a perfect angle of it. The handle is so loose.
Yeah.
That is so far from his body.
Because it's not like he's not making a dribble move. He's literally just driving downhill with his left hand with no defender around him. There's no that's gonna get taken.
Yeah, and then like you can see here, like the way that like his feet get kind of caught up there
as
he goes and gathers, like obviously contacted, but that's a smaller guy that like you'd be hoping that he could kind of go through contact wise. Again, draws the foul, but yeah, just there are some skill things that need to improve with Salaun. This one,
great effort on the
tracks the offensive rebound down. Always just so active and energetic on offense and defense. I love that part of his game. We're into the 3rd quarter now. Salaun, sets the screen, filters to the corner, waits for the ball. Again, like to me here, the feet are sort of ready, but not really, right? Like his feet he's got like one angled this way. He's got one angled toward the rim. Right. and then he like kind of just like goes off the hop to try and get them set, and that's like a super contested shot. 10 seconds left on the shot clock. Not the kind of shot we want, right? Not what we're hoping for. Next, again, same corner, lifts up to the wing. He's going to try and drive, just very loose, like can't get by that guy at all.
Yeah. Great effort on the offensive boards. Like, I don't know if he comes up with that one. I assume he doesn't, but that was great effort sprinting in there, trying to get inside position. There's been a few of those where he hasn't come up with it, but you can see defenders are going to have a nightmare keeping him off the offensive boards.
Yep. Baseline drive into a nice little dump off pass.
Yeah. Nice.
Ends up being an assist. This is like maybe the thing that I was most impressed with him.
I think I would agree offensively.
On the offensive end, like in this game.
Attacks a closeout.
Attacks the closeout, 2 dribbles into a nice little dump off pass. That's the kind of stuff that I like really like. And that like you can hope is a growth area for him. In terms of like the passing in general throughout the course of the year, Salaun averaged, 1 assist per game. Yeah. Basically, this was like one of the better passing games that he had this year. This is absolutely not the norm. This play, like for the most part, it's just reversals, his assists. But this was a good flash to have on tape. You don't want to, overcorrect for it though. Again, here comes down, then sprints. Look at him sprinting. Look at him go.
So like, here's what I love. Can we go back to the beginning?
Adore this.
Go back just a little bit further though. Yeah. Because I cannot tell you how many guys will not do what he does when this shot goes up on the weak side. Shot goes up. He's out on the perimeter. His teammates are getting box outs. He comes sprinting in on the weak side to get involved. And if you told me that he's the dude that beats everybody else down the floor right now, you would like, that's not a bet you would normally make it, based off where people are positioned. And the other thing is right now, when I talk about transition, getting his teammates open, look at all the gravity he has in the lane, where if that pass isn't thrown, he has teammates trailing to the 3-point line that would have been wide open. If he ends up on a team who wants to go, he is going to make a major impact in transition.
This is why I want him in Oklahoma City for what it's worth.
Yeah.
But continuing on now defensively, weak side, comes in, gives that little bit of like stunt help, right? On early offense or early defensive possession, right? And it's just ground coverage, right? Like look at him going from, almost the middle of the lane all the way out to like an awesome contest. That's a lot of ground to cover. He has a chance to be, I think, a really, really good defensive player, like a really, really good defensive player. This one here, this is one where it's just like totally out of control in terms of like his movements. I don't know what he saw there. Like it's obviously a take foul, but like, it's a very confusing take foul. He just like hip checks the guy.
Yeah.
Now we're into the 4th quarter, and this is where like the offense like really starts to kick in, right? Like I think he has like 10 points, in pretty quick succession here. Just look at the screening, pops out, confident 3.
Yeah.
It's basically like pick and pop 3. Like
it's a nice shot.
Yeah.
Footwork.
Here we can actually kind of see the feet here, right? Gets the right foot down first, then left.
Oh yeah. No, that's nice. Yeah.
Drills the shot. Next one, again, like very, similar-y start to the set where he's setting the screen. Ooh. And again, back screen, right? Or back cut, right? So I love how he sees this so early, right? Like he sees his man tag. His man comes in here defensively to try and cut off this guy who's rolling to the rim. He sees it. He sees his man look at him and he puts the hand up.
Yeah.
He can see that his man's looking at him. Throws up the lob. Catches it like at the square, like top of the square, right?
Yeah.
2 feet, like off the ground, right? This is where I think like we see the length, right? I do think he probably is like a 7'2" wingspan. Like that's long. Like he is very long, clearly.
Yeah, those numbers will be interesting that we get over this next few days.
Few days, hopefully. Yeah. This one here, you know,
communication. Lets his man know that he's 2 on and X's out. That's beautiful. And he doesn't get involved on that defensive board, but he was trying to get back involved.
Yep. So gets out here. So let's start this a little bit further back. So sees the screen, communicates with the smaller guy here. The key here is that recognizes that this is the smaller player and that they're going to want him, who is 6'9", without shoes, probably 7'1", 7'2" wingspan, whatever we want to call it. They're going to want him in the lane instead and hit this guy to guard 1-on-2. So what do we see here? You know, we get the reversal. Like you said, his man comes up, guards. He's responsible for the kick out to Heafy, right? I love this defender. Like, this is just fantastic from this defender, right? Like, look at his footwork there, positioning, keeping this extra pass from happening while Salaun gets back into this play. This is just awesome, awesome, awesome defense, right? They end up giving up the drive. His man's there. It's fantastic defensive possession. It's a fantastic defensive possession across the board.
Yeah. That's good stuff. I mean, that's stuff we've broke down with defenses in the NBA in terms of, and I think what's important there for everybody to understand, usually like the generic thing there is just the low man, the lower guy is the tag man, but his awareness to know, hey, I'm the bigger guy on this side. I'm going to go tag. And he pointed and communicated it to his teammate to make sure his teammate knew he was doing that and his teammate needed to go play 2-on-1.
That's right. So this one, you know, they kind of run like this weird like flare action out for him. Throws the extra pass, pump fake, drive, draws the foul. Again, like to me, that's one that I would like to see him finish, to be honest with you. I know that like he gets the foul call, but you know, that's not a lot of contact. Like, and he gets like a pretty clean release there. In terms of Salaun's touch, you know, on runners, Salaun is 2 for 17 this year on runners or floaters, according to Synergy. There's just not like a crazy amount of skill there right now with him is kind of my concern. You know, as we kind of run through these last few here, as you can see, super tight game. Cholet is up 3. Comes across, extra pass down to the corner. They get this weird skip pass to the corner. He cuts again. Offensive rebound, finishes at the basket. Just the effort. It's always the effort. The effort and energy is unbelievable. He just runs and moves and is constantly flying around. He's a fantastic off-ball player. He's a fantastic off-ball player.
And he moves the ball well. I think that's part of being a good off-the-ball player as well. Multiple of these clips, he catches and he makes the one more pass or the rotation or the swing, however you want to phrase it. He does a really nice job of that. And that's helpful, right? Maybe he doesn't attack closeouts real well early in his career, but if he can catch and shoot, cut, offensive rebound, but keep the ball moving and it never sticks, that's a huge value until he figures some of the other stuff out, if he ever does.
Yep. Basically the same set as the last one here. Rolls back up to the top. I mean, the confidence is serious.
Yeah.
Like
big time shot.
This is literally the next possession right after that last one, after he got that offensive rebound. I mean, look at the footwork, the bend. This is the exact shot. Like, this is the mechanics you want from this shot, right? This shot to me is like the building block for him, right? Perfect balance. Look at his body, just like straight up and down. This shot is the building block to me, where like you believe that he can be a shooter.
Yeah.
If you are 18 years old and you can do this coming off of like a quick little replace movement where you have to get your feet up under you with 9 seconds, 8 seconds left on the shot clock, up over a contest, I can work with this.
Yeah.
Like, given where like 34% off the catch already on decent volume, that is something I can work with at the end of the day.
In a big
And
moment.
this one, yeah, in a huge moment, comes down, kind of loses control of his body. He knows it. He calls it out immediately. You'd like to see him get the rebound, and you'd like to see him not drill Heafy there. Again, the control of the body sometimes isn't always elite, but the effort on the glass is always elite. Having said that, he just got swatted by like a guard going up for this little floater, and that's not ideal here.
Yeah.
Next up, you can see weak side, active, ready. They're running some like guard to guard screening actions. He gets kind of caught sleeping there, but then like
continues to play.
Scram switches like all the way out to the wing. Again, like the ground coverage is absurd, just completely ridiculous. Like totally falls asleep here, but recognizes where he needs to get to. I love the processing on defense. I love that he recognizes that's not the easiest guy. Like Karl Towns blows this like regularly in the NBA, like recognizing where he needs to scramble switch to. And Salaun recognizes it at 18 years old, like immediately.
Well, and most guys would just, I got beat back door, and they just stand on that side of the lane. I mean, he covers all the way to the other side of the floor, to the opposite wing, where most guys would just kind of hang out and be like, oh shoot, next possession. And he just doesn't give up on plays.
Never gives up on plays. This might be the last one we have here. I don't remember what this is, to be honest with you. A screen here. He gets kind of like back screened and still finds a way to get out for the contest, for the closeout. I mean, I think we all like have a good feeling of what Salaun is at this point.
Yeah.
To me, the archetype here is like garbage man, like Aaron Gordon-y kind of player, but he's not as skilled as what Aaron was coming out of Arizona. Having said that, I think that the shot is much more advanced than what Gordon was coming out of Arizona. For the role, like you can say that, like, honestly, like it might be more important for him to have the shot than like all the rest of the on-ball stuff. I do think that like this was a great game for him, like offensive processing wise, right? As compared to a lower level game for him, which we've seen many of this year. This was his best game of the season, I would argue, given the defense and everything as well. And the moment, like given how important this was, playoff game, quarterfinals against Paris, everything. I still have him like back half of the lottery, personally. I have him, I think, like somewhere like 12 to 14 right now.
Yeah,
like
I think he's right around 10, 11, 12 for me, in a tier that goes through the back half of the lottery to the mid first round. So we're in a similar place with him. Let me ask you something real quick, because I had somebody ask me this the other day, and you have a much better pulse on this than I do. And they asked me what Salaun, this league that Salaun is playing in, can you give us a ranking of the leagues outside of the NBA? And like, don't worry about the G League. Don't worry about, I mean, you can if you want, but the NBL, this league, etc. Like, even the Chinese basketball, because there's a couple players that we've talked about throughout this cycle.
The Chinese league is not very strong.
Okay,
we can just kind of say that from the jump.
Okay,
so I personally, and like I don't know if this is fucking homer bias or not, whatever, living here, but like I personally think the quality of play in Australia is a bit higher than France.
Okay.
France to me is not quite as high as like Spain or certainly EuroLeague, for instance. I know that when I talk to, I don't know if I want to put them on blast. I was talking to someone that said that they have like a higher rating for the Turkish league typically within their analytic systems. The French league is like pretty hit or miss, I would say. Playoff teams in the French league, like Paris is a really good team. Paris is really, really good. Do I think that like the best team in the NBL would beat Paris? I don't know. Like it'd be like, do I think Tasmania would beat Paris? It'd be like a question. I think I'd probably take Tasmania in that game, to be honest with you. I think I'd take Perth in a game against Paris. So like kind of trying to like give you a rundown. Yeah. Like I think that it's a good league. It's not quite at like the top of like Spain. I think Australia is a little bit better personally. Uh, again, like it's probably in that ballpark with like Germany. The German league is another one that we have to deal with because of
Where's the Adriatic?
Gaudier and Nunez. Adriatic League is almost like kind of its own ball game to me. The best teams in the Adriatic League, I think, are better than the best teams in France, like Red Star, Partizan. Like those teams just have like a ton of money. I would say that the Adriatic League is almost like kind of its own beast because it's not a particularly athletic league. That's where like you will see like, they ran like all those defenses where like you would have a big switched onto Topic and like Topic is like driving and just like blowing by and like having no issues. It's complicated, I think is what I would say.
So here's what league what is there a league that makes you nervous to evaluate? So like that's a good one right there with the Adriatic League of, okay, we need to make sure we take into athleticism type of context with this league.
Yeah.
Are there any other leagues? You mentioned the Chinese basketball. Are there any other leagues where when you're evaluating someone, you're like, man, I need to remember this context, or that it's way lower in terms of what we're dealing with right now?
Yeah. So like, I think the French league can be like a little bit more athletic in general.
Okay.
I think that, I think Spain's like the best like blend of kind of all of it. Like the Spanish league, like you're going to have like all sorts of like incredible sets run. And like, I think the coaching in Spain is like fantastic. The NBL, I think, is probably like the closest to the NBA style in terms of like up and down transition play, like sets that get run, super heavy ball screen league. It's all quite different, I guess, is like the easiest way to phrase it.
And then just real quickly, the G League, let's just say the G League in general, because we know the Ignite was a disaster.
Talent wise, better. There are more talented players in the G League, but because guys are going up and down the whole time, and because like a lot of those guys like are playing to try and get called up to the NBA, like it can be a little bit more selfish in terms of like play style. Like more talent, those teams are more talented. I don't know that they're better teams, maybe.
And just in general, maybe not as good at basketball because of that.
It can be uglier basketball. Yes.
Yeah.
I would say the basketball itself can be a bit uglier.
So this was kind of my pulse on it. But again, this is, I've said it multiple times now, like kind of my first year really, really diving into it. So I actually wanted the answer for myself also to make sure I was on the right track there. And I knew people that don't have the same access as we do, especially like Synergy and stuff. It's hard for them to always know the context of some of these players in the leagues they're playing in. So,
yeah. Someone asked here, where are we at? What is the earliest that I think Salaun could go on draft night? I think that I would say his earliest seems to be 8. To San Antonio, there have been rumblings about that already. It seems like, I would imagine it will probably have to do with like what they do at 4, for instance.
Yeah.
I, in terms of like where I fall on his evaluation, like I am quite worried about like the offensive skill level. I don't like him putting the ball on the deck really ever right now. I like the cutting. I like the fact that I think he could shoot long-term and probably will shoot long-term, but it's like a multi-year process. Like Salaun is a multi-year. I don't think he'll come in and play immediately guy, like from the jump. And then you throw in on top of it, like the finishing in the half court, the athletic concerns there. Let's say that like, can he take good enough advantage of the cutting once he gets to the rim? Right.
Yeah.
If you're making 40% of your layups, you're probably not, to be honest with you. So like, a lot of this has to do, I think, with like how he deals with contact right now, like the heavy takeoff points that are super far away, and like what happens to his footwork when he gets bumped. A big piece of this is like how you think his body will develop. I mean, that dude like is pretty big already, like, and he might be like enormous by the time he's like in his mid-20s. I kind of think that the finishing has a chance to like get to like a solid level. Like I think it probably will get to a solid level. I don't think it'll get to like, Aaron Gordon like skying above the rim and like finishing like crazy. I think of him as like an awesome, like I think he will definitely be an NBA player for sure. Like I have no real questions about that. I think he will definitely be an NBA player. The defense is too good. The ground coverage is too good. The activity level is too good. He'll play in the NBA. I can't quite get to like a top 10 level for him because I think the skill level and the processing is just like a little bit lower than where I want it for those kind of guys.
So real quick, just based on play types, if you look at spot up where he drives, he's less than 30% overall from the field. On cuts, he's at 71%. So I think that's like you can figure out real quick where those finishing numbers are a concern, and it's not, transition. We talked about the cut. When he has to put it on the deck, it's a real concern. I have him, right there around 10 with Devin Carter and Cody Williams and some guys like that, but not necessarily as a top 10 player. I mean, the guys I have, he's right at the start of my tier break, essentially. And so I know people like, obviously I'm around Detroit fans a lot. I have people who ask me about Salaun a lot. And I think his archetype is something that's very exciting for Pistons fans. But can you add another guy with questionable jump shot that may take longer? I think it depends on Trajan Langdon's, vision for the future. I think there's too many guys above him for me to really consider him at 5. Portland at 7 could be interesting depending on if they think he can make it to 14 and some factors like that. And then, San Antonio makes a lot of sense depending on what they end up at 4. So I think there's a path to him inside the top 10. I like it more whenever you get to 10, in terms of where I have him ranked. Like Oklahoma City just makes so much sense.
The team, I just really want him to go to Oklahoma City. Like they need a guy like this. The shooting, I think, will come along. They tend to bring guys along slowly. Again, like they just need a guy that's like big, athletic, defensively conscious. Like it might take a little bit of time, but this is like a perfect swing for them.
I feel like 12, 13, like I think 12, it makes sense. 14 to the Blazers makes a ton of sense if he's still there. Yeah. The Kings maybe would want somebody that's a little bit more ready, but him as an heir apparent to.
I will also say that like the reporting out of Sacramento seems to be that they think that there's a real shot that pick gets moved.
Okay. So I think he would make sense long-term there, but I don't think they're going to be patient enough to do it. So 12 and 14 would be the sweet spot for me for Salaun, unless somebody jumps on it earlier.
Yeah. And again, like I think he will be an NBA player. Like I think that there's like a good chance he's a starter, even if the shot comes along. If the shot comes along, like he's going to be like a good starter, like a really good, again, like Aaron Gordon-y, this guy impacts winning at a high level, potentially guy. I just think it's going to take time, and I would want him in a really positive developmental situation. If I was like his representation, I would almost like want him in Oklahoma City. Yeah. Like I would be trying to like lock that in like now, as opposed to like take a risk to see where it gets to eventually.
Sure.
Okay. We're going to take 10 minutes and answer draft questions at the end here. We've gotten a few throughout this already. Let's see here from Izana Kibret. Washington reportedly wants a lottery pick. What's the highest lottery pick they could get for Kuzma's contract? Last question. Do we think Tristan Vukcevic can develop into an average defender? I don't like the way he moves, so I don't really see that with Vukcevic. I get the offensive skill, like can kind of dribble a little bit, can shoot it a little bit. I don't love the like movement ability there, which is why I'm a little bit worried about him kind of bumping up levels in that way. Yeah, I would say I have some concerns on Vukcevic. I know he closed the season in an interesting way, but yeah.
Definitely concerned. I mean, I think his path is you just got to be a high level skilled big who spaces the floor, knocks down shots. Average defender, I guess, like if he just becomes really good positionally where he's always in the right spot, rebounds well, those type of things would be the path. But I'm kind of with you in like athleticism, movement, flexibility, those type of things kind of cap guys on the defensive end at times.
From YouTube user Cody or Saloon, if you're a GM, Bryson, Sam.
I mean, I have him right there on my board. I'll be honest, I have Saloon a little bit higher right now. So I guess Saloon. I think team matters a little bit here, but I have real questions about both, I guess would be my answer.
I have Cody a little bit ahead. What I would say is it is definitely team specific for me. Like if I was Oklahoma City, I mean, it's funny that like Cody is the guy here to compare to because they have Jalen, obviously. I would rather have Saloon if I was Oklahoma City than Cody. If I was, Utah, I would rather have Cody than Saloon.
Yeah.
Given what they currently have. If I was, I'm trying to think of, who has number 9, Memphis, right? Like Memphis, I don't know if like either of these guys would be like super high on my board, just given how many projects they have.
What about Chicago? Chicago at 11.
I would probably want Cody if I was Chicago. If I was Sacramento, I think I would probably prefer Cody. If I was San Antonio, it's pretty close to me for San Antonio. It's like even closer than where I have them on my board. And then for Portland, I think I'd rather have Cody, to be honest with you.
Okay, interesting. I just really like Saloon for Portland. There's such different players because like at the end of the day, Cody has great touch around the rim and hasn't developed physically yet. And, it's shot a crazy percentage from 3, but it was on crazy low volume. And I don't want to say he doesn't have a great motor, but you're not talking about his energy and multiple efforts and stuff like that with him as much as we do Saloon. So they're just very different players with, I think, some of the same concerns of what, there's a little bit of rawness. It's going to take a little bit while. But the mentalities between those two, I think, are just so different. Like, again, that's my thing with Cody is where's the aggressiveness? Where's the, and that's the other thing with Cody. I told someone this the other day. I was a little lower on Cody Williams coming out of high school. And so I think a lot of people will point to the high school film, and that's not something real quick. I want to go back to the question before, because they ask about Kuzma, like the Wizards getting another lottery pick. Do you think Kuzma's contract could get the Wizards back into the lottery? And if there was a team, who would it be? Like, would the King? We just talked about the Kings. Would the Kings trade 13 for Kuzma? And obviously,
like, could you do like Harrison Barnes in 13 for Kuzma?
Sure.
Look, I'd probably do that if I was. Would I do that if I was the Kings? I would want maybe 26 back.
Okay.
Would I?
Don't you think Kuzma's much better than Harrison Barnes at this point?
Man, I wish the Wizards had like a second, like an early second or something. Like I would probably want like maybe next year's second for the Wizards or something. Kuzma is much better than Harrison Barnes, but like I don't know if it's like such a difference that I'd want to give up 13 as well. There's something there though. Like I think the answer is Sacramento, basically. I think the answer is Sacramento.
My thing with Kuzma always is I think I give him credit being a better floor spacer than what he is. Although the volume is really good, he's still like a 34. Like he's just right on the border with the 3-point percentage, but that contract is insane. And yeah, maybe PJ Washington has given me a little bit more hope that you put Kuzma in the right situation and you see an uptick on the defensive end as well.
But we've seen that. Like we know that will happen. We've seen it with the Lakers before.
With the Lakers, that's true.
Like to me, it's like a good bet on that front. From James McKinney, what do you think the best possible option for the Jazz would be at number 10? Would you trade it? Everything like that. Look, I think like Cody Williams or Ron Holland for me.
Ron Holland was the name for me. Yeah.
would be up there. Yeah. Like Topic is kind of interesting to me to pair
Sure.
with Keontae George. And I think there is a chance that Topic could get there.
Yep.
Just based on the injuries and everything. Topic would be an interesting one. It would just be like a real bet. Like it'd be a significant bet on him. Yeah, Cody Williams like sticks out to me for them for some reason. Like I like the idea of getting like a potential dribble pass shoot wing with length. I think that would be like really valuable for them.
Listen, I'll say with Ron Holland here just to be a little bit different, and because I do have Ron Holland ranked higher on my board than Cody Williams, but I think there's a real chance Holland could fall to this spot because I think at the end of the day I value him probably more than what others will. I think Ron Holland has real two-way potential in terms of I think he can be impactful defensively. I think he can go get buckets on the offensive end, and it's just a swing at what is it 10 with Utah? Yeah, it's a swing at 10 if I'm Utah with that position. I would take that swing on Ron Holland if he's on the board there.
And I also kind of like the activity level of like pairing him with like Taylor Hendricks. If you want to have like
sure.
a great, like, you know, Hendricks can really shoot it. Keontae George can really shoot it. Like having like multiple dudes around him that can play in that way.
And Lowry obviously spaces the floor. So Ron's lack of shooting potentially isn't maybe as much of an issue because you have some floor spacers right there around him. And yeah, if you had Hendricks and Holland being crazy defensively and Walker Kessler, you know, protecting the rim, like starts to get a little bit interesting there and starting to put some things together. So that would be the answer for me.
From Willie, thoughts on Jacoby Walter? Seems like a guy consistently mocked in the lottery and rarely talked about. I mean, look, like I have not been mocking Jacoby Walter in the lottery for 3 or 4 months now, probably maybe 3 months. I like Jacoby. I don't love him. I really did not like the defense this year was my problem. I thought that, you know, he's billed as this 3-and-D guy and like he's smaller, you know, comes in at, what was he at the combine? I think he was 6'4", right? Let's see here. Where that's testing. Where are we at measurements wise with Jacoby? 6'4", 2'5" with a 6'10" wingspan. I think people like look at the wingspan and think that he can like really defend. And I think he has a chance to defend, but he's not good at it right now. And it's hard, like he kind of moves awkwardly a little bit defensively to me. Yeah, I think the shot will be fine. Like I know he shot 34 from 3 this year. I think he will shoot it. I have him like right around 20 though right now. Like I don't really have him as a lottery guy.
Yep, he's in my tier that actually gets right past the mid first round and into the like. I don't think he's going to be a late first round pick, but kind of that tier. I'm with you. I haven't talked about him in the lottery for a minute. I think he's going to shoot. Like that's the one thing I will say. The numbers are a little concerning. The thing is, I didn't love some of the other scoring coming out of high school, and I think it's a concern going into the NBA. And then you hit it nail on the head with if he's going to be a 3-and-D player, he's got to be better defensively. I think he was billed as a really good defender coming out of high school, and I don't think it panned out that way in college. And so he, you know, with the rise of guys like, you know, someone like Jared McCain even, and yeah, I like Jalen Tyson and some of these guys. He's been the guy that's slowly moved down my board, and that's why I haven't talked about him as a lottery pick.
Yeah, I think that's right. You know, Bob Carrington from Elks is my favorite player in this draft. How do you feel about his fit with the Spurs? Ticks so many boxes. I mean, it's a great fit to me. I love that idea. I would very strongly have him on my board if I was San Antonio. I have Bob Carrington as a top 10 guy. I am going to be highest on him in the public sphere. So yep. I love the processing. I love the pull-up shooting ability. You know, I think he can really pass it. I think the defense got better throughout the year. He's still 18 years old. Like I think the world of Bob Carrington. So it's going to take time. Like he's another, like, you know, it might take a year for him just to like fill out the body and everything. But yeah, I definitely am a Bob Carrington guy.
Yeah. I thought I was a Bob Carrington until you said that. So I guess I'll just shut up.
Yeah, I've Bub in the top 10. Okay, a question for Bryce. What do you think the best player is that the Pistons could land with number 5 and any one of their non-Cade young players?
What's the best one you think? Oh, number 5 plus a young.
So like
player.
adding 5 with Ivy.
Brandon Ingram? Could you get?
Yeah, probably.
Right.
I mean, I think you would definitely get Ingram for that deal. Yeah.
Who else is on the market? Like. what's Jared like? Would it take 5 in Duren to get Jared Allen?
I think probably
Is that too much for Jared Allen?
it's probably about what they'll want.
It depends on how you value like the young guys too. I think that's the equation there.
Yeah, that's what I'm struggling with, because like I don't value Duren. So like,
because some people would say you're giving up 2 lottery picks for Jared Allen. That's a way overpay.
yeah. Yeah, like my issue with all of this is I'm not like a big Jalen Duren guy. If it was Ivy in 5, I'd be like, no, I wouldn't do that for Jared Allen. But yeah, I don't know. Is it more likely that Pacom Dadier is an internet darling or an actual late riser? For what it's worth, I'd kind of been getting told by teams that like Dadier had a chance to go in the first before the internet rise happened. I would say he is likely to go in the top 40-ish right now. That would kind of be my response. Anywhere from like 24 to 40, seems to be the range at this point.
Yeah, I have him in that range on my board. And yeah, I mean, it seems like he's got some real momentum here.
Yeah. It seems like there's like real momentum. If you're the Suns, would you trade out of 22 for 2 second-round picks? I would want more than 2 seconds personally. I would. It would need to be like 31 in like multiple seconds to me, if I'm doing that. Who are some of the late first, early second guys that could be steals for top heavy contenders? That will be a podcast that we do maybe next week, not like this coming week, but the week after that. Because we'll do like sleepers and things like that. Topic, Dilly, Castle, or Shepherd, who is the best fit for the Spurs?
I still like the idea of Topic there for the player. I think we've said this for months now that Rob Dillingham is, I think the Spurs are the best fit for him. My guess is a lot of people would say Shepherd though.
I would have one of Castle or Shepherd, and I think I would take Castle personally, because Castle's just the guy that I have highest on my board. Imagine being able to run like 6'6" across the front line with Wemby behind you, right? Like that'd be pretty gross, but also like, you could cover for Reed defensively, and Reed's processing ability would be really fun with the Spurs too, right? Like if they ended draft night with Steph Castle and Reed Shepherd, like I'd lose my mind. Like that, if I was a Spurs fan, I'd absolutely lose my mind. That'd be like the best possible outcome to me. Yeah, let's see here. Blazers pick is wide open. Who do I like most at the pick? Yeah, I think the Blazers pick is wide open right now. I would agree with that.
The 3 names I like for them are Connect, Buzelis, Saloon.
I would
then
like
Cody Williams as well, obviously.
Yeah, I would like Connect there quite a bit. I think Modest would make sense there too. I'm like a little bit lower on Modest than what some people are, but
no, I am as well. And like if you took Modest, I don't think you would take Saloon and some of the but those are the 4 names that stick out to me in my top 14, 15.
Where do you have Modest?
I keep going back and forth. Closer to the back end of the lottery than the top of the lottery.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I agree. Dougie T, who is the projected second round pick that I love this year? My answer is Jamal Shed. Do you have an answer to that, Bryce?
You know who I like is Keyshawn Johnson. I don't know if he ends up even being a second round pick. I just think he looks like an NBA player. The shooting has gotten a little better every year. He is an older prospect. I just think if you draft him in the second round, you're getting a rotation forward who is super athletic, guards a little bit, maybe can shoot a little bit, cuts that I just tend to like his game. And so he's the one I've kind of answered with this for right now.
Yeah. I like Keyshawn too. I have him at like 50, and I've been wondering, like, am I too low on him? Like the more I watch him, I feel like nobody ever talks about Quentin Post. Like
I was going to say him next. So
Quentin Post, like being 7 foot and like dribble pass shoot is interesting to me.
Yeah. I've been trying to tell Pistons fans, if you actually want to like get excited about a guy at 53 because it's still pick 53 in the second round, Quentin Post makes a lot of sense for Detroit because as Pistons fans, we look for bigs that can space the floor, and I'm like, that's the guy to go take at 53 then. And so I like Quentin Post. He's way older, but he can space the floor. He's huge.
Yeah, he's like legit 7 foot, like 9'3" standing reach. I mean, the last guy I have to bring up here, like I'm contractually obligated to bring up Cam Spencer here.
Yeah.
Because Cam Spencer is like my favorite basketball player in college of like the last many years. Like watching that dude like mess with the crowd and like talk shit and just his mentality. Like I adore him. I adore his game. Okay. Thanks for the questions, guys. We appreciate it. We'll keep doing this as we go through. Bryce, what do we have for Tuesday? Do we have a podcast plan yet?
We do not, and we need to talk about the day because little kid baseball starts. Little kid baseball starts for the month of June, and they play a lot of games on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we need to discuss schedule.
Love it. Okay. So I have a podcast idea for this week that I won't share yet. I am excited about that. Yeah, that's all I've got. Let's get out of here. We've gone for too long already. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter. And honestly, guys, just follow over there, and then you'll find all the stuff I put out, scouts, podcasts, everything I do. And other than that, Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecenie right here.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. That will be valuable. I will have a mock draft this week for sure. I have a mock draft coming this week. What else do I have? I probably have a couple of things on the Rockets and Spurs coming later in the week. And then, I'm finishing draft guide this week finally and knocking it off of my plate. We will be back, probably on another day. We're not sure yet, but we'll be back in the middle of the week this week at some point. Until next time, we'll talk soon.